Hi guys! Tonight, we're stepping into the grease-scented corridors of Silicon Valley's most unlikely boardroom. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe grab a coffee, you'll see why in a moment, and let's walk together into the fluorescent lit chaos of a 24-hour diner where 3 engineers are about to change the world. This is about something much more primal. The human desire to see impossible things. You're sitting in a cracked vinyl booth at Denny's. It's 1993, and the smell of burnt coffee mixed with bacon grease is so thick you can practically chew it. Your name is Jensen Huang, you're 30 years old, and you've just made a decision that will either make you a billionaire or the world's most educated, unemployed engineer. The fluorescent lights above flicker like they're Morse coding warnings, but you're not paying attention. You're too busy drawing circuit diagrams on a napkin that's already soaked through with coffee rings. Across from you sit Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem, 2 engineers who, like you, have decided that steady paychecks at Sun Microsystems and IBM are overrated. The combined smell of their anxiety and your cheap cologne creates an atmosphere that would make a skunk gag. But here's the thing about Destiny, it doesn't care about ambience. Your fingers trace patterns on the sticky table surface. Each fingerprint you leave behind is like signing an invisible contract with the universe. The waitress, her name tag says Dolores, but her expression says I've seen things, refills your coffee for the 4th time. The ceramic mug has a chip on the rim that catches your lip every time you drink, a small reminder that nothing perfect ever changed the world. Chris is explaining something about graphics acceleration, his hands moving through the air like he's conducting an orchestra of electrons. Curtis nods along, occasionally stabbing his scrambled eggs with the enthusiasm of someone discovering fire. You're supposed to be listening, but your mind is elsewhere. It's calculating market sizes, competitive landscapes, and the probability that 3 guys in a Denny's can compete with companies that have headquarters bigger than city blocks. The Grand Slam breakfast in front of you cost $5.99. Your savings account has $40,000. In Silicon Valley terms, that's like trying to build a rocket ship with pocket lint and good intentions. But spoiler alert, you're about to turn that pocket lint into a company worth more than the GDP of most countries. Just not in the way anyone expects. Here's where things get weird. Before we talk about the graphics revolution you're about to start, let me tell you about the time you almost gave up entirely. But first, understand this moment right here in Denny's. You pull out a business plan you've been working on. It's 12 pages of pure optimism mixed with engineering diagrams that look like someone tried to map the human nervous system using only straight lines. The core idea isn't artificial intelligence. That's still science fiction to most people in 1993. No, you're talking about something that sounds equally insane, making computers create worlds that don't exist. The vinyl seat squeaks as you lean forward. Graphics, you say, and the word hangs in the air like a challenge. Not graphics as in making PowerPoint presentations prettier, though God knows the world needed that too. You're talking about graphics as in creating entire universes inside a silicon chip, worlds where physics can be whatever you program it to be, where teenagers can become warriors, where architects can walk through buildings that haven't been built, where scientists can model molecular interactions in real time. Curtis stops mid-chew. A piece of egg falls off his fork and lands on the business plan, leaving a small yellow stain that looks oddly like the sun. It's 2:17 AM according to the clock on the wall, the kind of clock that's been wrong for so long that being wrong has become its correct state. Time moves differently in 24-hour diners anyway. It's always simultaneously too early and too late for the decisions being made in these booths. The thing about starting a tech company in 1993 is that everyone thinks they know what computers are for. Spreadsheets, word processing, maybe some basic games that look like animated cave paintings. The idea that computers could create photorealistic 3D worlds. That's the kind of thinking that gets you politely escorted out of investor meetings. Your coffee has gone cold again. The laws of thermodynamics seem particularly aggressive in this Denny's, like the universe is trying to tell you something about entropy and failed startups. You ignore it and take another sip. The bitter taste mingles with the weird sweetness of artificial creamer, a combination that tastes exactly like venture capitalism feels. We need a name, Chris says, wiping his mouth with a napkin that disintegrates on contact. You've been through dozens of possibilities. Every tech company in the valley seems to be named either after Greek gods or random combinations of syllables that sound vaguely futuristic. You want something different. Something that suggests seeing everything, knowing everything, being everywhere. The fluorescent light above your booth finally gives up and dies with a small pop. For a moment you're sitting in relative darkness, illuminated only by the glow from the kitchen and the distant light of other booths. It's oddly perfect. 3 engineers sitting in the shadows planning to illuminate the world. Pause here for a second. Guess how much NVIDIA would be worth in 30 years. Comment your prediction below. Bonus points if you guess within $1 trillion. Outside the window, Silicon Valley sleeps. Or at least pretends to. In reality, there are probably 100 other conversations happening in 100 other diners, each group convinced they're about to change the world. Most of them are wrong. Statistical probability says you're wrong too. But statistics haven't accounted for what happens when obsession meets opportunity, meets a complete disregard for sleep schedules. You reach for the sugar dispenser and accidentally knock over the salt shaker. A small avalanche of sodium chloride spreads across the table, mixing with the coffee stains to create what looks like a topographical map of some alien landscape. Chris laughs. It's the nervous laugh of someone who's about to jump off a cliff and just remembered they're afraid of heights. Curtis starts arranging the salt into patterns with his finger, unconsciously designing circuit pathways and seasoning. The name comes to you while watching him work. NVIDIA, from NVIDIA, the Latin word for envy. Because that's what you want every other graphics company to feel when they see what you're about to build. It's aggressive, it's confident, and it's slightly pretentious. Everything a Silicon Valley startup should be. The waitress returns with the check. $18.37 for 3 breakfasts and enough coffee to kill a horse. You pay with a 20 and tell her to keep the change. In 30 years, those $1.63 in tips will be the best ROI Dolores ever sees, considering she's serving the future founders of a $2 trillion company. But she doesn't know that. She just knows 3 nerds who can't stop drawing on napkins. You're standing in Jensen's apartment now. It's been 2 weeks since the Denny summit, and the place looks like what would happen if a Radio Shack exploded inside a college dorm room. The smell is a complex bouquet of instant ramen, burnt circuit boards, and something that might be either genius or a gas leak. The carpet, and you're being generous calling it carpet rather than textile crime scene, is covered in technical manuals, product specifications, and enough empty Mountain Dew cans to build a small pyramid. This is NVIDIA's first headquarters, though headquarters implies a level of organisation that simply doesn't exist here. You've got 3 computers that generate more heat than a small sun, a whiteboard that's so covered in equations it looks like someone's trying to prove the existence of God using only math, and a printer that only works if you kick it exactly right, a skill that will, oddly enough, prove useful when dealing with investors later. Your wife walks past the door, sees the chaos, and just shakes her head. She's gotten used to finding circuit boards in the kitchen drawers and technical diagrams in the bathroom. Last week, she found a GPU prototype being used as a coaster. The coffee stain on it actually improved its thermal properties, though you'll never admit that in the patent filing. The business plan has evolved from 12 pages of optimism to 40 pages of what you're calling aggressive realism. The market for 3D graphics accelerators is approximately $0, mainly because the market doesn't exist yet. It's like trying to sell sunglasses to cave dwellers. Technically they don't need them yet, but once they see the sun, they'll wonder how they lived without them. Chris is sprawled on the couch, which is really just a futon that's given up on life. He's been awake for 37 hours straight, sustained entirely by pizza and the kind of determination that borders on psychiatric concern. His latest design sketch looks like what would happen if you asked a spider on caffeine to draw the Tokyo subway system. It's either brilliant or insane, and in Silicon Valley, those are often the same thing. Curtis is in what you've designated the lab, actually just the spare bedroom with better ventilation. The smell of solder flux drifts out like incense from some electronic temple. He's building the first prototype, hand-placing components with the precision of a watchmaker and the patience of someone who's forgotten what sunlight looks like. Every few minutes, you hear either a triumphant yes or a defeated expletive that would make a sailor blush. Here's something nobody tells you about tech startups. 90% of innovation happens between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. when your brain is too tired to remember why something is impossible. The phone rings. It's your 4th potential investor this week. They all ask the same question. Why would anyone need advanced graphics? You've gotten good at the answer. You talk about CAD applications, medical imaging, scientific visualization, all legitimate uses that sound impressive and boring enough to be taken seriously. What you don't tell them is your real vision. That one day every human on Earth will carry a device capable of rendering reality in real time. That graphics won't just be about seeing things, but about creating entirely new realities. The prototype Curtis is building looks like something a mad scientist would create if they were really into Lego and had access to military-grade electronics. It's held together with cable ties, hope, and what appears to be chewing gum in one corner, but when you plug it in and run the first demo, a rotating cube with texture mapping, it's like watching the future boot up one pixel at a time. You've named the chip NV1. Not the most creative name, but you're engineers, not poets. The NV1 is designed to do things that shouldn't be possible with 1993 technology. It processes quadratic surfaces instead of triangles, which is like deciding to write everything in haiku when everyone else is using paragraphs. It's elegant, it's sophisticated, and it's about to be a complete commercial disaster. But you don't know that yet. Right now, you're too busy being amazed that it works at all. The apartment's air conditioning gave up sometime last week, and the heat from the computers has turned the place into something between a sauna and a server farm. You're all constantly covered in a thin sheen of sweat that makes you look like you're permanently auditioning for an action movie. The neighbours have started complaining about the noise. Apparently the sound of innovation at 3 AM sounds a lot like disturbing the peace to normal people. Your business cards arrive from the printer. NVIDIA Corporation in bold letters, with an address that's just this apartment. You've listed yourself as President and CEO, which sounds impressive until you remember you're also the janitor, coffee maker, and guy who has to figure out why the internet keeps cutting out. Spoiler, it's because Curtis keeps overloading the circuits with his experiments. Would you work 100-hour weeks in a hot apartment that smells like feet and failed dreams? Comment if yes, if you value your sanity. You're burning through your savings at a rate that would make your mother cry and your financial advisor quit. Each component for the prototype costs money you don't have, bought with credit cards that are screaming for mercy. The American Express bill alone looks like a phone number from a country with really long phone numbers. But here's the thing about building the future. It's expensive, it's exhausting, and it smells terrible. The apartment has become a time machine where Monday becomes Friday, without anyone noticing. Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday happened. You measure progress not in days, but in problems solved, and each solution just reveals 3 new problems like some horrible engineering hydra. Jensen hasn't slept in his bed for a week. He's been sleeping on the floor next to his computer, waking up every few hours to check simulations. His back is basically held together by determination and ibuprofen at this point. His wife has started leaving sandwiches next to him, like he's some kind of pet that needs feeding. The watershed moment comes at 4 AM on a Tuesday that feels like a Thursday, but might actually be a Saturday. The prototype successfully renders a complex 3D scene. A teapot, because computer graphics engineers have a weird obsession with teapots. At a frame rate that doesn't cause seizures. It's smooth, it's beautiful, and it's running on hardware that costs less than a used car. You all stand there, 3 exhausted engineers in their underwear, because clothes are for people who have time for laundry, watching a digital teapot rotate on a monitor that's held up by programming books and empty pizza boxes. It's not exactly the moon landing, but it feels just as significant. You've just proven that professional-grade 3D graphics can be democratized, made affordable, brought to the masses. Of course, the masses have no idea they want this yet. That's always the problem with innovation. You're solving problems people don't know they have, creating desires that don't exist yet. It's like trying to sell fire to people who haven't discovered cold yet. You're walking into a conference room that costs more to rent per hour than you spend on food per month. The carpet is so plush your feet sink into it like expensive quicksand. The table is made from wood that's probably extinct, polished to a shine that could blind a bat. You're wearing your only suit, a polyester blend that makes swishing sounds when you walk, announcing your presence like the world's worst superhero. The venture capitalists sit across from you, their faces arranged in expressions of polite skepticism. They're wearing watches that cost more than NVIDIA's entire operating budget. One of them has a Mont Blanc pen that he keeps clicking. a nervous habit that sounds like expensive metronome counting down to your failure. Your hands are sweating so much you're afraid to shake anyone's hand. The laptop containing your presentation weighs approximately 700 pounds, or at least feels like it, and you're pretty sure the battery is going to die mid-presentation because that's exactly the kind of thing that happens when the universe wants to test your character. Jensen starts the pitch. His English still carries traces of Taiwan and Oregon, a combination that makes him sound like he's inventing words as he goes. But when he talks about graphics processing, his voice changes. It becomes the voice of someone who's seen the future and is trying desperately to explain it to people still living in the present. Imagine, he says, and the word hangs in the air like an invitation to madness. Every computer being able to create photorealistic 3D worlds in real time. The lead investor, let's call him Richard because he looks like a Richard, raises an eyebrow. It's the kind of eyebrow raise that's ended 1,000 startup dreams. And who exactly needs this, he asks, in a tone that suggests he already knows the answer is nobody. This is your moment. You stand up, accidentally knocking over your water glass, which spills across the table in a perfect metaphor for how this meeting is about to go. But you don't stop. You launch into an explanation of texture mapping, polygon rendering, and frame buffers that's so technically dense that Richard's eyes glaze over like donuts. Chris jumps in with market projections that are based on equal parts research and wishful thinking. The CAD market alone is worth billions, he says, conveniently leaving out that none of those billions are currently being spent on graphics accelerators because, well, they don't really exist yet. Curtis pulls out the prototype. It's been professionally packaged in a Radio Shack project box with holes drilled for ventilation. It looks like something you'd find in the evidence locker of a very boring crime. But when he connects it to the projector and runs the demo, something magical happens. The room fills with spinning, texture-mapped 3D objects. A rendered spaceship flies across the screen with smooth, fluid motion. A digital dinosaur, because Curtis insisted on a dinosaur, walks through a forest that exists only in silicon and imagination. For 30 seconds, the venture capitalists stop being venture capitalists and become kids again, watching something impossible happen right in front of them. This is where I tell you that they immediately wrote a check for millions of dollars. Except that's not what happened. Reality, unlike rendered graphics, doesn't have a smooth frame rate. Richard leans back in his chair, which probably costs more than your monthly rent. It's impressive, he says, in the same tone you'd use to describe a dog that learned a new trick. But the market doesn't exist. You're trying to sell something nobody knows they need. You want to scream. You want to grab him by his expensive lapels and explain that every transformative technology started this way. Nobody needed smartphones until they did. Nobody needed the internet until they couldn't live without it. Nobody needed to see realistic 3D graphics until, well, until when exactly? The meeting ends with the corporate equivalent of "we'll call you," which in Silicon Valley means "we'll never speak again unless you become successful without our help, in which case we'll claim we always believed in you." You're packing up the prototype when the youngest investor, barely older than you, pulls you aside. His name is Don Valentine from Sequoia Capital, and unlike Richard, he doesn't look at you like you're insane. He looks at you like you might be onto something. "The technology is interesting," he says quietly, "but technology alone doesn't build companies. Markets do. Find your market, then come back. It's not a yes, but it's not a no. In venture capital terms, that's practically a marriage proposal." Back in the apartment that night, you're all sitting on the floor because sitting on actual furniture seems too optimistic after that meeting. The prototype sits in the middle of your circle like some kind of electronic totem. The pizza is cold, the beer is warm, and morale is somewhere between cautiously optimistic and preparing resumes. "We need a customer," Jensen says, stating the obvious with the gravity of someone discovering physics. "One real customer who needs what we're building." The silence that follows is the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Because here's the dirty secret of NVIDIA's founding. You built the technology before finding the market. It's like inventing a car in a world without roads, and then trying to convince people to build roads so they can use your car. But then Curtis mentioned something that changes everything. Sega called yesterday. Sega, the gaming company, the ones making those console things that kids are obsessed with. They're working on something called the Saturn, and they need a graphics chip. Not just any graphics chip, they need something revolutionary, something that can make their games look unlike anything anyone's ever seen. Spoiler alert, this partnership is about to go spectacularly wrong in ways that will nearly kill NVIDIA. But first, let's talk about how you convince a Japanese gaming giant to bet their future on 3 guys working out of an apartment that violates several health codes. The phone call with Sega happens at 2 AM because time zones are just another problem to solve when you're desperate. Jensen's Japanese is rusty, your Japanese is non-existent, and Chris's Japanese consists entirely of words he learned from anime. But somehow, through a combination of technical diagrams faxed at resolutions so low they look like abstract art and enthusiasm that transcends language barriers, you manage to convey your vision. Sega wants to see the prototype. They're sending engineers from Japan. Your apartment suddenly needs to transform from startup squalor to presentable business environment in less than 48 hours. What follows is a clean-up montage that would make any reality TV show proud. You rent furniture, keeping the tags on for easy return, hide the sleeping bags and create a demo room that's really just the bedroom with better lighting and all the dirty laundry shoved into closets that are now biohazards. When the Sega engineers arrive, they look at your headquarters with expressions that diplomatically avoid judgment. They're wearing suits that fit properly, shoes that match, and watches that actually tell the correct time. You're wearing your best attempt at business casual, which mostly just looks like you raided a golf pro shop. But when the demo starts, none of that matters. The NV1 chip renders graphics that make the Sega engineers lean forward in their rented chairs. They start speaking rapidly in Japanese, pointing at the screen, their professional composure cracking to reveal genuine excitement. Through the translator, one of them says something that will haunt you for years. This is exactly what we need for Saturn. You're staring at a check for $7 million. Not a metaphorical check, not a promised check, but an actual piece of paper with more zeros than you've ever seen attached to real money. It's from Sega, and it represents either your company's salvation or the fanciest way anyone's ever committed corporate suicide. The check sits on Jensen's kitchen table, the same table where 3 months ago you were eating ramen and wondering if you'd have to sell your car. Now you have enough money to buy a small fleet of cars, except you can't, because every penny of this is already allocated to something called actually building what we promised. Here's what Sega wants: a chip that processes quadratic surfaces for their Saturn console. If that sounds like technical gibberish, imagine trying to draw the world using only curved lines, when everyone else uses straight ones. It's mathematically elegant, theoretically superior, and practically insane. But you've already said yes, cashed the check, and started hiring engineers who think this is a perfectly reasonable thing to attempt. Your new office isn't an apartment anymore, it's an actual office in Sunnyvale, complete with cubicles that smell like fresh plastic and hope. The carpet is that special shade of corporate grey that makes you question your life choices, but at least it's not covered in Mountain Dew stains yet. Give it a week. The team has grown from 3 to 20, then 30, then 40 engineers who all share a specific type of insanity. They believe computer graphics will change the world, and they're willing to work 100-hour weeks to prove it. The office smells like a combination of coffee, anxiety, and whatever that thing is that electronics emit when they're pushed beyond their specifications. Fun fact: the human body can survive on pizza and energy drinks for exactly 73 days before it stages a revolt. Your entire team is on day 74. The NV1 chip development is consuming money at a rate that makes your burn rate look less like a burn and more like a cremation. Each wafer of silicon costs thousands of dollars, and most of them come back from the fab with defects that make them useful only as very expensive coasters. You're literally turning sand into money, then turning money back into broken sand. But here's where the story gets weird. And I mean, what were they thinking? Weird. While you're building Sega's chip, the rest of the industry is quietly standardizing on something called triangle-based rendering. Microsoft is pushing something called Direct3D that uses triangles. Every other graphics company is using triangles. Triangles are becoming the lingua franca of 3D graphics. And you're using quadratic surfaces because that's what Sega wants. And Sega is currently the only thing standing between NVIDIA and bankruptcy. Jensen spends 18 hours a day in the office, sleeping on a cot in the conference room. His wife brings him clean clothes and food that isn't from a vending machine, making her possibly the only reason he hasn't died of scurvy. He's lost 15 pounds and gained a facial tic that appears whenever anyone mentions deadlines. The first major problem arrives in the form of a phone call from Japan. Sega's engineers have been testing the NV1, and they have concerns. In Japanese business culture, concerns is code for "this is a disaster, but we're too polite to say so directly." The chip works, technically. It renders beautiful quadratic surfaces. The problem is that no game developers know how to create content for quadratic surfaces. It's like building the world's best DVD player in a world where everyone's still using VHS. You fly to Japan for an emergency meeting. The flight is 14 hours of anxiety masquerading as air travel. You're rehearsing explanations in your head, each one sounding less convincing than the last. The guy next to you asks if you're okay, because apparently you've been muttering quadratic surfaces in your sleep. The Sega headquarters in Tokyo is a monument to gaming success. There are arcade, machines in the lobby, statues of Sonic the Hedgehog everywhere, and an energy that makes you realise these people take fun very, very seriously. You're ushered into a conference room where executives sit in silence that costs millions of dollars per minute. The translator delivers your explanation about the technical superiority of quadratic surfaces with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. The Sega executives nod politely, which in this context means absolutely nothing. They could be agreeing with you, or they could be planning your corporate execution. Japanese business etiquette makes poker faces look emotionally transparent. Finally, the senior executive speaks. Through the translator, "We appreciate NVIDIA's innovation. However, the market is moving toward triangles. Can the NV1 be modified? Can it be modified? That's like asking if you can turn a fish into a bird, because you've decided you prefer flying to swimming. The entire architecture is built around quadratic surfaces. Changing it would mean starting over, and you've already spent most of Sega's $7 million on the current design. This is the moment where successful companies pivot and failing companies persist. Guess which one NVIDIA chose? Spoiler, we're still here, so you promised to find a solution. What that solution is, you have no idea, but you've got a 14-hour flight back to figure it out. Somewhere over the Pacific, drinking airplane coffee that tastes like disappointment with wings, the answer comes to you. Build both. The NV1 will support both quadratic surfaces for Sega and triangles for everyone else. It's technically possible in the same way that climbing Everest and flip-flops is technically possible. Doable, but probably fatal. Back in Sunnyvale, you announce the new plan to the engineering team. The silence that follows is the kind usually reserved for funeral services or tax audits. Chris actually laughs, but it's the laugh of someone who's just realised the boat they're on is sinking, and they forgot to pack life jackets. "We're going to support both rendering methods," Jensen says, with the confidence of someone who's either visionary or delusional. "The NV1 will be the Swiss Army knife of graphics chips." Curtis raises his hand. "That's going to double our development time and triple our complexity." "Then we'd better work faster," Jensen replies, which is the startup equivalent of saying, "then we'd better grow wings," when you're falling off a cliff. What follows is 6 months of what can only be described as voluntary insanity. The office becomes a 24-hour operation. Engineers sleep under their desks, shower at the gym next door, when they remember to shower, and sustain themselves on a diet that would make nutritionists weep. The code base grows so complex that new engineers need a week just to understand the architecture. The chip design looks like something M.C. Escher would create if he was really into semiconductors and had a sadistic sense of humour, but slowly, miraculously, it starts to work. The NV1 can now render both quadratic surfaces and triangles. It's like creating a car that runs on both gasoline and hopes and dreams. Technically impressive, but practically questionable. The chip is so complex that the documentation alone weighs 12 pounds. The manufacturing cost is astronomical. But it works. You're standing in a Best Buy in 1995, watching a teenager look at your product. The Diamond Edge 3D graphics card powered by the NV1 chip. With the same expression people reserve for modern art they don't understand. The box promises revolutionary 3D graphics and arcade-quality gaming, but costs $450, which in 1995 money is basically a mortgage payment. The Diamond Edge 3D is NVIDIA's first consumer product, and it's simultaneously a technological marvel and a commercial catastrophe waiting to happen. It's like you've built a Ferrari engine and put it in a shopping cart. Impressive, but missing the point entirely. The card can do things no other consumer graphics card can do. It renders both quadratic surfaces and triangles. It has ports for Sega Saturn controllers, because why not confuse consumers even more? It comes with a full version of Virtua Fighter, which would be exciting if anyone knew how to get it to work properly. The installation process requires a PhD in computer science, or a really good relationship with prayer. You're doing a demonstration at the store, and approximately 3 people are watching. One is definitely homeless, and just enjoying the air conditioning. Another is a store employee who has to be there. The third is actually interested, but loses enthusiasm when you explain that installation requires opening the computer case, changing IRQ settings, modifying config.sys files, and possibly sacrificing a small animal to the DOS gods. Back at the office, the sales numbers are coming in, and they're the kind of numbers that make you question your career choices. You've sold approximately 1,000 units, total, worldwide. There are probably more people who can juggle flaming chainsaws than own a Diamond Edge 3D. The reviews are equally brutal. Computer Gaming World calls it ambitious but confused. PC Gamer says it's a solution looking for a problem. One reviewer just writes why and leaves it at that. The kindest review calls it interesting, which in technology journalism is like calling someone nice. Technically not an insult, but definitely not a compliment. Jensen is reading these reviews in his office, which is really just a cubicle with higher walls. Each negative review causes a facial expression that cycles through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and a weird kind of acceptance that looks like constipation. He's got a collection of stress balls that he's destroyed so thoroughly they look like foam crime scenes. Here's a business lesson nobody teaches in MBA programs. Sometimes you can do everything right technically and everything wrong commercially. The Diamond Edge 3D is a masterclass in this principle. The real problem isn't the technology. The technology is actually impressive. The problem is that you've built something nobody asked for, solving problems nobody had, using methods nobody else is using. It's like inventing a translator for a language only you speak. The Sega partnership is dissolving faster than sugar in hot coffee. The Saturn itself is struggling against Sony's PlayStation, which uses simple triangle-based graphics and is eating Sega's lunch, dinner, and next week's meal prep. Your quadratic surface rendering, beautiful as it is about as useful as a chocolate teapot in this new gaming landscape. The office mood has shifted from ambitious startup to death march. Engineers who are working 100-hour weeks out of passion are now working them out of desperation. The coffee machine, which has been running continuously for 6 months, finally breaks down in what feels like a metaphor too obvious to be accidental. Chris pulls you aside one afternoon. His eyes have the hollow look of someone who's seen too many spreadsheets. "We have maybe 6 months of runway left," he says, which is corporate speak for, "We're screwed unless something miraculous happens." The miraculous thing that needs to happen? Abandoning everything you've built and starting over. The NV1, the quadratic surfaces, the entire technological foundation of your company. It all needs to go. It's like demolishing your house because you built it facing the wrong direction, except the house cost $7 million and you're still living in it. Curtis is in the lab looking at the NV1 chip through a microscope like a detective, examining evidence of his own crime. "We could have been great," he mutters to the silicon. "If triangles didn't exist, we'd be kings." But triangles do exist, and more importantly, Microsoft's Direct 3D has made them the standard. Every game developer is using triangles. Every graphics application is using triangles. The entire industry has agreed that triangles are the way forward, and NVIDIA is standing alone in the corner, clutching its quadratic surfaces like a child with a security blanket that's on fire. The decision comes during a meeting that starts at 8 p.m. and doesn't end until the sun comes up. Empty pizza boxes pile up like cardboard monuments to indecision. The whiteboard is covered with pros and cons lists that look like they're having their own civil war. Finally, at 6:47 a.m., with everyone running on fumes and false hope, Jensen makes the call. We abandon NV1, we start over. We build NV3 for triangles only. Yes, NV3, there is no NV2. When asked why, Jensen says, "NV2 was our learning experience. We learned not to build it. This is the kind of humour you develop when your company is dying." The room is silent except for the buzz of fluorescent lights that have witnessed too much corporate trauma. Everyone knows what this means. Throwing away 2 years of work, admitting failure, and betting what little money remains on a complete restart. One engineer, let's call him Dave because he looks like a Dave, raises his hand. What about our existing customers? The people who bought Diamond Edge 3D? We support them, Jensen says, which is noble but impractical, like promising to water a plant in a house that's being demolished. But our future is triangles. Comment below. Would you have the courage to throw away everything you built and start over? Or would you ride the sinking ship all the way down? The pivot to NV3 begins immediately. It's less of a pivot and more of a complete 180-degree turn while on fire and being chased by creditors. The entire codebase is scrapped. The hardware designs are thrown out. Years of work are deleted with the casual cruelty of pressing the delete key. But here's the strange thing. The mood in the office actually improves. There's something liberating about admitting failure and starting fresh. It's like finally breaking up with someone you should have left years ago, painful but necessary, and suddenly the future looks possible again. The NV3 design is everything the NV1 wasn't. Simple, focused, and completely aligned with industry standards. It's purely triangle-based, direct 3D compatible, and designed to be manufactured at a cost that won't require selling organs. It's boring in all the right ways. The team works with a different kind of energy now. It's not the naive enthusiasm of the early days or the desperate panic of recent months. It's the focused intensity of people who have learned from their mistakes and are determined not to repeat them. You're in the NVIDIA lab at 3 AM on a Tuesday in 1997, and something impossible just happened. The RIVA 128 chip, the NV3's commercial name, just rendered Quake at 60 frames per second. For context, that's like watching your grandmother suddenly start breakdancing. It shouldn't be possible, but there it is, happening right in front of your eyes. The lab smells like victory mixed with burnt electronics and whatever biohazard is growing in the coffee pot. Curtis is actually crying, though he claims it's just allergies. Chris is doing what can only be described as an engineer's version of dancing, which mostly involves awkward arm movements and stepping on his own feet. Jensen is staring at the monitor like he's seeing God. If God was measured in frames per second and texture fill rates. The River 128 is everything the NV1 wasn't. It's fast, it's affordable, it's compatible with everything, and most importantly, it doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It just makes the wheel spin at ludicrous speed. The name River stands for Real-Time Interactive Video and Animation, which sounds impressive until you realise it's basically a backronym someone created after 3 beers. This chip is your Hail Mary, your last shot, your if. This doesn't work. We're all updating our LinkedIn profiles moment. The company has burned through most of its remaining capital developing it. The credit cards are maxed out. The venture capitalists are circling like well-dressed vultures. But none of that matters right now because Quake is running at 60 frames per second. And in 1997, that's basically magic. Quick pause. Imagine your favourite game running at PowerPoint presentation speeds. That was PC gaming before Riva 128. Now imagine it suddenly running like butter sliding down a hot pan. That's what we're talking about here. The benchmarks are insane. The Riva 128 is destroying everything in its path like Godzilla in a city made of graphics cards. 3DFX's Voodoo Graphics, the current king of 3D acceleration, is suddenly looking very mortal. ATI's Rage Pro is getting beaten so badly it should file a police report. The River 128 isn't just competitive, it's dominant. But here's the problem. Nobody knows who NVIDIA is. You've spent 2 years being invisible except for the spectacular failure of the NV1. In the graphics card world, you're not even the underdog. You're the dog nobody knew was in the fight. The marketing budget is whatever coins you can find in the couch cushions. The sales team is 3 guys who learned everything they know from watching Glengarry Glen Ross too many times. The PR strategy is basically, please, someone, anyone, write about us. Then something beautiful happens. The internet notices. A website called Tom's Hardware publishes a review of the Riva 128. The headline reads, "Dark Horse destroys competition." The benchmarks are so good that people initially think they're typos. Forums light up with discussions. Is this real? Who is NVIDIA? How do you even pronounce NVIDIA? Orders start coming in. Not a trickle, but a flood. Diamond Multimedia, STB, ELSA, all the major board manufacturers want the Riva 128. They want thousands of chips, then tens of thousands. The fab in Taiwan calls to confirm the order numbers because they think there's been a mistake. There hasn't been. The office transforms from a morgue to a madhouse overnight. Phones are ringing constantly. Engineers who haven't slept in days are high-fiving with the coordination of a newborn giraffes. Someone brings in champagne, but it's the cheap stuff that tastes like carbonated regret, but nobody cares because it tastes like success. Jensen calls an all-hands meeting. He's wearing the same shirt he's worn for 3 days, which has achieved a level of wrinkle that defies physics. We're not celebrating yet, he says, but he's smiling in a way that suggests his face might crack from the unusual expression. This is just the beginning, and he's right, because while everyone is focused on the Riva 128's performance, Jensen is already thinking about the next chip, and the one after that. He's learned the lesson of the NV1. You can't rest on your technology. You have to keep moving, keep improving, keep pushing, or someone else will push you right out of the market. The Riva 128 ships in late 1997 and sells 1 million units in 4 months. For context, the Diamond Edge 3D sold about 1,000 units total. It's like going from a lemonade stand to Coca-Cola overnight. The company that was 6 months from bankruptcy is suddenly profitable. Here's where the story could end with, and they lived happily ever after. But this is Silicon Valley, where happy endings are just intermissions before the next crisis. The competition isn't sleeping. 3DFX announces the Voodoo 2. ATI is working on the Rage 128. Everyone wants a piece of the 3D acceleration market that NVIDIA just proved is bigger than anyone imagined. The graphics wars are about to begin in earnest, and NVIDIA is no longer the scrappy underdog, it's a target. But something else is happening that nobody except Jensen sees coming. The real market for graphics isn't just games, it's everything. Every computer will need powerful graphics, every application will become visual, every industry will need to render complex images. The Riva 128 isn't just a gaming chip, it's the first step towards something much bigger. Chris finds Jensen one night, staring at a wall covered with Moore's law projections and market analysis that looks like the work of a very organised crazy person. "What are you thinking?" Chris asks. "I'm thinking," Jensen says, "that we're not a graphics company. We're a computing company that happens to start with graphics." This distinction might seem semantic, but it's about to drive every decision NVIDIA makes for the next 2 decades. While everyone else is fighting over who can render games faster, Jensen is thinking about scientific computing, professional visualization, artificial intelligence, markets that don't really exist yet but will someday be worth trillions. The Riva 128 success gives NVIDIA something it desperately needed: credibility and capital. The company that nobody had heard of 6 months ago is now being mentioned in the same breath as ATI and 3DFX. Tech magazines are calling to request interviews. Investors who wouldn't return their calls are suddenly very interested in having lunch. But Jensen remembers Don Valentine's advice from that first failed investor meeting. Technology doesn't build companies, markets do. The Riva 128 proved NVIDIA could build great technology. Now they need to prove they can build great markets. You're sitting in a conference room that's too small for the egos it contains. It's 1998, and NVIDIA is planning something that will either revolutionize computer graphics or bankrupt the company in the most spectacular way possible. The codename is NV10, but you're going to call it GeForce, because someone in marketing finally earned their paycheck. The whiteboard is covered with specifications that would make a normal person's brain melt. 23 million transistors, 256-bit rendering engine, hardware transform and lighting. These aren't incremental improvements. This is like going from a bicycle to a rocket ship and skipping all the steps in between. Jensen is pacing back and forth, which he does when he's either brilliant or about to suggest something insane. With Jensen, it's usually both. "We're going to build a GPU," he says, and everyone stops breathing for a moment. GPU, graphics processing unit, not a graphics accelerator, not a 3D card, but a GPU. A processor specifically designed for graphics, co-equal with the CPU. It's a semantic difference that's about to become a several billion-dollar distinction. The room smells like ambition and leftover Chinese food. Someone's forgotten lunch has achieved sentience in the microwave. but nobody wants to deal with it because they're too busy reshaping the future of computing. Priorities. Here's something most people don't know. The term GPU didn't exist before NVIDIA. We didn't just build a better graphics card, we invented an entire category of processor. It's like inventing the word airplane, while everyone else is still calling them flying machines. The NV10 development budget is $100 million. That's not a typo. $100 million on a single chip. For a company that almost died 2 years ago, this is betting everything on black and then setting the roulette table on fire for good measure. If NV10 fails, NVIDIA doesn't just lose, it ceases to exist. The technical challenges are absurd. Hardware transform and lighting means moving calculations from the CPU to the GPU, which is like teaching your graphics card to do math it was never supposed to understand. The competition thinks it's impossible, Intel says it's unnecessary, Microsoft says it's premature. Jensen says, build it anyway. The engineering team grows to 150 people, all working on different aspects of the NV10. The chip design looks like a city map drawn by someone with severe ADHD. The documentation grows so large it needs its own filing cabinet, then its own room, then its own database that crashes regularly because even it can't handle the complexity. David Kirk, NVIDIA's chief scientist, is living in the office. Literally. He's set up a sleeping bag in the lab and showers at the gym. His diet consists entirely of energy drinks and whatever food can be delivered at 3 a.m, which in 1998 is basically pizza or regret. The first silicon comes back from the fab and it doesn't work. At all. It's a $2 million coaster. The second revision has a bug that makes it actually catch fire, when running certain calculations. The third revision works, but only on Tuesdays during a full moon while facing east. Would you bet your entire company on one product? Comment if you're a gambler, if you prefer the safety of a savings account. Chris is stress-eating his way through the development cycle. He's gained 20 pounds and developed a twitch that makes him look like he's constantly winking at people. We're going to run out of money before we run out of bugs, he says one day, which is both accurate and terrifying. But then, miracle of miracles, revision 4 works. Not just works, it sings. The GeForce 256, the commercial name for NV10, can do things that shouldn't be possible in 1999. It can render scenes with dynamic lighting that makes games look like movies. It can process geometry at speeds that make the competition look like they're running in slow motion. The demo is Quake 3 Arena running with hardware transform and lighting enabled. The difference is like watching standard definition TV your whole life, and suddenly seeing 4K shadows move naturally. Light sources behave like actual light. Characters have depth and dimension that didn't exist before. The marketing team, which has grown from 3 guys with opinions to an actual department, comes up with a tagline: the world's first GPU. It's bold, it's controversial, and it's about to start a war with every other graphics company who thinks calling it a GPU is just marketing fluff. 3DFX CEO says publicly that GPU is just a made-up term. ATI claims their chips do the same thing. Intel suggests that graphics processing should stay on the CPU where it belongs. The industry press is skeptical. PC Gamer writes an article titled GPU, Genius or Gimmick. Then the benchmarks come out. The GeForce 256 doesn't just beat the competition, it humiliates them. It's 50% faster than anything else on the market. In some tests, it's 100% faster. It's like bringing a Formula 1 car to a go-kart race. The numbers are so dominant that reviewers run the tests multiple times because they think something's wrong. But here's the really clever part. NVIDIA doesn't just release a GPU. They release an entire ecosystem. Developer tools, optimization guides, technical support. Everything a game developer needs to make their games look incredible on GeForce. It's not just selling a product, it's selling a platform. John Carmack, the legendary programmer behind Quake and Doom, says publicly that GeForce is the most significant advance in consumer 3D graphics ever. When the guy who basically invented modern gaming says that people listen, pre-orders explode, manufacturing can't keep up, the GeForce 256 launches at $280 and sells out everywhere instantly. People are paying $500 on eBay for cards that retail for $280. NVIDIA suddenly has a problem they've never had before. Too much demand. The office celebration is legendary. Someone brings in a cake shaped like a graphics card, which is both touching and slightly sad. The champagne this time is actually good. Success has its privileges. Engineers who haven't seen sunlight in months are blinking in confusion at this strange concept called victory. But Jensen, ever the paranoid optimist, is already thinking about the next chip. During the celebration, he pulls the senior engineers aside. "This is great," he says, "but Moore's law doesn't take vacations. Neither do we." The GeForce 256 sells 1 million units in its first 3 months. NVIDIA's stock price doubles. The company that was nearly bankrupt is suddenly worth over $1 billion. The term GPU becomes industry standard. Every graphics card from every manufacturer is now called a GPU, even though NVIDIA invented the term. You're watching the most powerful graphics company in the world commit slow-motion suicide, and you have a front row seat. It's 2000, and 3DFX, the company that invented consumer 3D graphics, the company that owned the market just 2 years ago, is dying. And NVIDIA is about to deliver the killing blow, not with aggression, but with something far more devastating: superior execution. 3DFX's headquarters in San Jose looks like a monument to past glory. They have a museum of their products in the lobby, actual museum displays. For graphics cards, it's like they're already preparing their own obituary while still technically alive. The story of how NVIDIA destroys 3DFX isn't a story of dramatic battles or corporate espionage. It's a story of two companies making opposite decisions at every critical juncture, like a business school case study in how to win by watching your competition lose. While NVIDIA focuses on building chips and letting partners build the boards, 3DFX decides to buy STB Systems for $141 million and manufacture their own boards. It's like a recipe company deciding to also become a restaurant chain. Theoretically makes sense, practically a disaster. Jensen watches this acquisition with the expression of someone watching their opponent in chess move their king into checkmate position. They just tripled their complexity for marginal gain, he tells the board. Let them. The NVIDIA office has a betting pool on when 3DFX will run out of money. The optimists say 2 years, the pessimists say 6 months. Curtis, ever the engineer, creates a mathematical model that predicts 14 months, based on burn rate and market share decline. He's off by 2 weeks. Here's a business lesson worth tattooing on your forehead. Never fight a two-front war unless you're absolutely certain you can win both fronts. 3DFX is now fighting NVIDIA on technology, and their former partners on manufacturing. Guess how that ends. The Voodoo 5, 3DFX's answer to GeForce, is a monument to desperate engineering. It uses 2 chips on one board because they couldn't make one chip fast enough. It requires an external power connector because it draws so much electricity it could brown out a small building. It costs $600 and performs worse than NVIDIA's $300 GeForce 2 GTS. The reviews are brutal. Maximum PC calls it too little, too late, too expensive. One reviewer just posts a picture of the massive card next to a GeForce and captions it, "David and Goliath, except Goliath loses." Meanwhile, NVIDIA releases the GeForce 2 family, GTS, Pro, MX, Ultra, a product line that covers every price point from $89 to $499. It's like carpet bombing the market with graphics cards. Everywhere 3DFX tries to compete, there's a GeForce variant already there, usually faster and cheaper. The 3DFX board meetings, according to someone who shall remain nameless but definitely worked there, are like watching the Titanic crew argue about deck chair arrangements. They're debating marketing slogans while their ship is taking on water at an alarming rate. NVIDIA's marketing, meanwhile, is brutal in its simplicity. They run benchmarks, lots of benchmarks. Every gaming website, every magazine, every forum is flooded with graphs showing GeForce destroying Voodoo. It's not subtle, but it doesn't need to be. The numbers speak louder than any marketing campaign. Then comes the masterstroke. NVIDIA partners with every major OEM, Dell, HP, Gateway, Compaq. Every computer sold with a graphics card has an NVIDIA GeForce Inside sticker. 3DFX, having alienated their board partners by competing with them, has nowhere to sell except retail, and retail is dying. The end comes faster than anyone except Curtis predicted. December 2000, 3DFX announces they're out of money. Their stock, once worth $50, is trading at 63 cents. They have $70 million in debt and no way to pay it. Jensen calls a meeting. We're buying 3 DFS's assets, he announces. The room is silent. Buying your defeated enemy's technology is either brilliant or unnecessary, and nobody's quite sure which. Why? Someone asks. We've already won. We're not buying their technology, Jensen explains. We're buying their patents, their engineers, and most importantly, we're buying certainty. No patent lawsuits, no surprise resurrections, no complications. NVIDIA pays $70 million for 3DFX's intellectual property and hires about 100 of their engineers. It's like adopting your enemy's orphaned children, merciful but also strategic. Those engineers know things, have experience, and most importantly, are really motivated to beat ATI now that 3DFX is gone. Pause and think about this. NVIDIA paid $70 million to buy a company that was worth $7 billion just 2 years earlier. That's a 99% discount. Black Friday has nothing on Silicon Valley company liquidations. The integration is smooth because there's nothing really to integrate. 3DFX's technology is already obsolete. Their multi-chip approach is a dead end. But their SLI technology, scanline interleave, has potential. NVIDIA files it away for future use. Spoiler, it comes back as scalable link interface, but that's a story for another chapter. The 3DFX engineers who join NVIDIA go through the 5 stages of grief in fast forward. Denial, our technology was superior. Anger, you destroyed us. Bargaining, can we keep the voodoo brand? Depression, we had the market. And finally acceptance, your dental plan is better anyway. One former 3DFX engineer, let's call him Mike, tells a story about his first day at NVIDIA. He's given a desk next to the team that designed the chip that killed Voodoo 5. It was like being adopted by the family that burned down your house, he says, except they also gave you a better house and a raise. The graphics industry takes notice. NVIDIA isn't just winning on technology, they're winning on strategy, execution and timing. Every decision 3DFX made wrong, NVIDIA made right. Every bet 3DFX lost, NVIDIA won. ATI is now the only serious competition left. Matrox is focusing on niche markets. S3 is basically dead. Intel keeps threatening to enter the discrete graphics market, but never does. The field that once had a dozen players is down to 2.5, with NVIDIA holding the largest share. The office atmosphere is different now. It's not the desperate energy of a startup or the manic excitement of survival. It's the focused intensity of a company that knows it's winning, but also knows that winning is temporary in technology. Jensen sends out a company-wide email after the 3DFX acquisition closes. The subject line is, "We won a battle, not the war." The email is short. 3DFX is gone because they stopped innovating and started protecting. The moment we do the same, someone will be writing our obituary. Stay paranoid, stay hungry. The next battle starts now. You're in a conference room at Microsoft's headquarters in Redmond, and Bill Gates just walked in. It's 2000, and he's still the CEO, still the richest man in the world, and still capable of making grown executives nervous just by adjusting his glasses. He sits down, looks at Jensen, and says 5 words that will change NVIDIA forever. We're building a game console. The room smells like Microsoft, a mixture of coffee, ambition, and the faint scent of monopolistic practices. The conference table could double as a landing strip. The chairs cost more than most people's cars, and somewhere in this building, a team is designing something called the Xbox, and they need a graphics chip. Here's the thing about Microsoft entering the console market. It's like watching your dad try to be cool. They have infinite money, brilliant engineers, and absolutely no idea what they're doing in the gaming space. Sony has PlayStation. Nintendo has Nintendo-ness. Microsoft has Excel, but they also have determination and a checkbook that defies comprehension. The Xbox project, codenamed Midway because apparently someone thought D-Day references were appropriate for entering the console wars, has a blank check budget. Not a large budget. A blank check, as in spend whatever it takes to beat Sony. Jensen is sitting across from the Xbox team, and he's doing mental calculations that would make a supercomputer sweat. The deal they're proposing is massive. NVIDIA will design a custom GPU for Xbox. The volume guarantees are insane. The technical requirements are impossible. The timeline is laughable. "We need the chip in 18 months, says Jay Allard. the Xbox chief architect who looks like he escaped from a Seattle grunge band. And it needs to be more powerful than PlayStation 2. Chris kicks Jensen under the table. Their agreed upon signal for "this is insane." Jensen kicks back. Their signal for "insane" means profitable. Fun fact, the original Xbox GPU deal was worth $200 million to NVIDIA. That's rebuild the company 3 times over money. That's buy a small country money. That's definitely worth dealing with Microsoft money. The negotiation is like watching 2 scorpions dance. Microsoft wants to own the chip design. NVIDIA wants to license it. Microsoft wants exclusive rights. NVIDIA wants to sell derivatives to PC manufacturers. Microsoft wants NVIDIA to commit seppuku if the chip is late. NVIDIA wants Microsoft to pay even if Xbox fails. The compromise they reach is so complex it requires its own team of lawyers just to explain it to other lawyers. NVIDIA will design the chip, codenamed NV2A. But it won't be just a port of their PC chips. It'll be custom, powerful and expensive. Microsoft will pay NVIDIA per chip, guaranteed minimum volumes plus development costs. Back at NVIDIA headquarters, the Xbox project gets its own floor. It's like a startup within a startup, except this startup has Microsoft breathing down its neck every second. The pressure is so intense that someone installs a countdown clock showing days until chip delivery. It becomes known as the Doom Clock. The NV2A development is insane. It needs to be more powerful than GeForce 3 but manufactured cheaper. It needs to work with Microsoft's custom operating system that doesn't exist yet. It needs to interface with hardware that's still being designed. It's like building an engine for a car while the car is being invented. And also the roads don't exist yet. David Kirk, still living in the office, his sleeping bag has been upgraded to a cot. Success has its privileges. Is having daily conference calls with Microsoft that can only be described as aggressive negotiations. Microsoft wants features. Kirk explains physics. Microsoft insists. Kirk explains physics again, but louder. The first silicon samples are due in 6 months. The team hasn't slept properly in 3. The coffee machine has been replaced with an IV drip system. Not really, but someone seriously suggested it. The stress level is so high that HR starts bringing in massage therapists, who leave more stressed than when they arrived. Then Intel enters the picture because this story needed more drama. Intel is making Xbox's CPU, and they're not happy about NVIDIA making the GPU. There's a rivalry here that goes beyond business. It's philosophical. Intel believes everything should be CPU-centric. NVIDIA believes GPUs are the future. They're both right and both wrong, but neither will admit it. The technical meetings between Intel and NVIDIA engineers are like watching cats and dogs try to design a house together. Every decision becomes a battle. Memory architecture, fight, bus speeds, war, power requirements, thermonuclear conflict. But somehow, miraculously, it works. The NV2A chip is a masterpiece of engineering. It can do programmable shaders, something PlayStation 2 can't. It can do real-time shadows that look actually real. It can render graphics that make grown men weep with joy, specifically the Halo developers, who are building their game around NV2A's capabilities. The first Xbox prototypes arrive at NVIDIA for testing. They're huge, silver, and look like someone weaponized a VCR. But when you turn them on and run the demos, magic happens. Games look better than anything on any console. It's not just competitive with PlayStation 2, it destroys it. Here's where I mention that despite Xbox being more powerful, PlayStation 2 still outsold it 155 million to 24 million. Turns out power isn't everything, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Launch day, November 15th, 2001. The Xbox launches with Halo, a game that looks so good it sells consoles by itself. The graphics, powered by NV2A, are unlike anything console gamers have seen. Forums explode with pixel counting comparisons. Digital Foundry doesn't exist yet, but if it did, it would be having a seizure. The reviews are glowing. IGN calls Xbox the most powerful console ever created. GameSpot says the graphics have to be seen to be believed. Someone on a forum claims the graphics are so good they cured his myopia, which is obviously false but speaks to the enthusiasm. But here's where things get spicy. Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, negotiated a deal where they pay NVIDIA a fixed price per chip, regardless of manufacturing costs. As time goes on and manufacturing gets cheaper, NVIDIA keeps charging the same price. Microsoft is losing money on every Xbox sold, and a big chunk of that loss is going straight to NVIDIA. The relationship starts to sour. Microsoft executives are calling Jensen, using words that would make a sailor blush. They want to renegotiate. Jensen points to the contract. They want to reduce prices. Jensen points to the contract. They threaten to use ATI for Xbox too. Jensen points to the contract and says, good luck with that. By 2003, the Xbox GPU deal has made NVIDIA hundreds of millions of dollars. It's also destroyed their relationship with Microsoft so thoroughly that when Xbox 360 comes around, Microsoft doesn't even call NVIDIA. They go straight to ATI, paying them $100 million just to avoid dealing with Jensen again. But NVIDIA doesn't care. They've used the Xbox money and expertise to dominate the PC graphics market. The technologies developed for NV2A become features in GeForce FX. The shader programming learned from Xbox becomes the foundation for CUDA, but we're not there yet in our story. Jensen's final comment on the Xbox deal, told to employees at an all-hands meeting, "We made money, we learned invaluable lessons, and we proved GPUs could power consoles. The fact that Microsoft hates us now, that's just proof we negotiated well. You're standing in a Pixar conference room in 2003, and the render farm in the next building sounds like a jet engine preparing for takeoff. It's not actually taking off. It's just trying to render a single frame of Finding Nemo, and it's been working on this one frame for 14 hours. The electricity bill for this building could fund a small country's education system." Ed Catmull, Pixar's co-founder, is looking at you with the exhausted expression of someone who's brilliant but tired of waiting for computers to catch up with his imagination. "We need more power," he says, which in the context of computer graphics is like a drug addict asking for just one more hit, except the drug is processing power and the addiction is to creating beauty. This is NVIDIA's new frontier, professional visualization. The gaming market is great, but Jensen has realized something important. Gamers buy one graphics card every 2 years for $300. Movie studios buy hundreds of cards every year for $3,000 each. It's the difference between selling hamburgers and selling Wagyu beef. The problem is that NVIDIA's gaming cards, while powerful, aren't designed for professional work. They're like sports cars, fast, flashy, but try to haul cargo in them and you're going to have a bad time. Professional users need trucks, expensive, reliable, boring trucks. Enter Quadro, NVIDIA's professional line. Same basic GPU architecture as GeForce, but with drivers optimized for OpenGL, certified for professional applications, and priced like they're made from unicorn tears and shareholder dreams. A GeForce might cost $400, the Quadro version of the same chip, $2,000. The difference? Software, certification, and the beautiful word professional in the marketing. Here's a dirty secret of the tech industry. Sometimes the only difference between a consumer product and a professional product is which features you turn off and how much you charge. It's like airline seats. Same plane, same destination, wildly different prices based on how much legroom your soul requires. Back at NVIDIA headquarters, there's a new division focused entirely on professional markets. They wear slightly better clothes than the gaming division, use words like enterprise and solution without irony, and have learned to keep a straight face when charging $4,000 for a graphics card. The workstation market is dominated by companies you've never heard of unless you work in very specific industries. 3D Labs, Evans and Sutherland, SGI. They're the incumbents, and they look at NVIDIA like a teenager who's wandered into an executive meeting. Their products are mature, stable, and beloved by IT departments because they never change. NVIDIA's strategy is simple: overwhelm them with performance. While 3D Labs is incrementally improving their cards by 20% per generation, NVIDIA is doubling performance every year. It's like watching a Tesla race a horse and buggy. Technically they're both transportation, but one is clearly living in a different century. The first major win comes from an unexpected place: oil and gas exploration. Turns out finding oil requires visualizing massive seismic datasets in 3D. The petroleum geologists, and yes, that's a real job that pays more than you'd expect, need to fly through virtual representations of underground rock formations. Their current systems take hours to render. Quadro does it in real time. You're in a presentation at ExxonMobil's headquarters in Houston. The room smells like money and moral ambiguity. The executives watching your demo have the combined net worth of a small nation's GDP. You're showing them how Quadro can visualize seismic data, and one of them actually gasps when the image rotates smoothly. How much? He asks. 4,000 per card, and you'll need about 200 for your visualization center, you reply. He doesn't even blink. In the oil industry, $800,000 is a rounding error. They spend more than that on coffee for their offshore rigs. But here's where things get interesting. While selling Quadros to professionals, NVIDIA's engineers notice something. These cards are really good at parallel processing. Not just graphics, any tasks that can be broken into parallel operations. And there are a lot of those tasks. Scientific computing, financial modeling, weather simulation, molecular dynamics. All of these require massive parallel computation, and they're all currently being done on CPUs, which is like using tweezers to move a mountain. Technically possible, but stupidly inefficient. Ian Buck, a Stanford PhD who looks like he was grown in a lab to be a computer scientist, joins NVIDIA with an idea. What if we could program the GPU for general-purpose computing? Not just graphics, but anything. Turn the GPU into a general-purpose parallel processor. The gaming team thinks he's insane. GPUs are for graphics, they say, with the conviction of people who've never questioned their assumptions. It's literally in the name. But Jensen sees something else. He sees a future where every compute-intensive task runs on GPUs, where NVIDIA doesn't just power games and movies, but powers discovery, innovation, and scientific breakthroughs. It's ambitious to the point of delusion, which is exactly Jensen's comfort zone. The project gets a code name, CUDA, Compute Unified Device Architecture. It sounds like something from Star Trek, which is appropriate because what they're trying to do seems like science fiction. Would you bet your company's future on a technology that nobody's asking for, solving problems that most people don't know exist? Comment if you're a visionary, if you prefer the safety of proven markets. The CUDA development is happening in parallel, pun intended, with the professional market expansion. By day, NVIDIA is selling Quadros to movie studios and oil companies. By night, they're secretly building the technology that will eventually make them the most valuable semiconductor company in the world. The first CUDA prototype is a mess. Programming it requires understanding of graphics pipelines, memory hierarchies, and parallel algorithms. The documentation is 500 pages of dense technical writing that reads like it was translated from Klingon by someone who hates humans. The tools crash constantly. The debugger is more of a suggestion than a tool, but it works. Sort of. A matrix multiplication that takes a CPU 10 seconds takes CUDA 0.1 seconds. A fluid dynamics simulation that takes hours on a CPU takes minutes on a GPU. It's not pretty, it's not easy, but it's fast. Stupidly, absurdly, game-changingly fast. The problem is that nobody wants it. NVIDIA goes to universities offering free CUDA training. Professors look at them like they're trying to sell timeshares. They go to national laboratories. The scientists are interested, but point out that all their code is written for CPUs, and rewriting it would take years. One potential customer, a hedge fund doing high-frequency trading, listens to the entire CUDA pitch, then asks, "But can it run Excel faster?" When told no, they lose interest immediately. This is the state of parallel computing in 2006, unlimited potential that nobody knows how to use. Jensen makes a decision that the board thinks is insane. Give CUDA away for free. Don't charge for the compiler, the tools, the libraries. Make it completely free for anyone to use. The board looks at him like he's suggesting they set money on fire for warmth. "We're not selling CUDA," Jensen explains. "We're selling the hardware it runs on. CUDA is just the gateway drug." You're in NVIDIA's architecture review meeting in 2006, and someone just used the phrase unified shader architecture for the 47th time today. The whiteboard looks like Beautiful Mind meets electrical engineering. There are so many arrows connecting different components that it resembles a conspiracy theorist's interpretation of the Kennedy assassination. The GeForce 8800, codenamed G80, is going to be NVIDIA's first CUDA-capable GPU. It's also going to be the most complex chip NVIDIA has ever built. 681 million transistors. For context, the human brain has 86 billion neurons, so this chip is roughly 0.8% as complex as your brain, which explains why it can't appreciate irony or feel existential dread. The chip design is revolutionary. Instead of separate vertex and pixel shaders, it has unified shaders that can do either job. It's like hiring employees who can work any position, instead of specialists who can only do one thing. More flexible, more efficient, and more likely to cause arguments about who does what. David Kirk is explaining the architecture to Jensen, using analogies that involve armies, orchestras, and at one point a Vietnamese restaurant's kitchen organization. The core concept: 100 or 28 stream processors that can be programmed to do anything. Graphics, physics, computing. It's all just math, and the G80 can do math very, very fast. The tool, tape-out, sending the design to be manufactured, costs $30 million. That's $30 million for a piece of silicon the size of a postage stamp. If it doesn't work, that's the most expensive postage stamp never to mail anything. Here's something civilians don't understand about chip design. You spend 2 years and hundreds of millions of dollars designing something, then you send it to be manufactured and wait 3 months to find out if you're a genius or an idiot. It's like pregnancy, except the baby might explode. Taiwan Semiconductor calls it 3 a.m. because time zones are just another engineering problem to solve, to confirm the chip specifications. The NVIDIA engineer on the call is so tired he accidentally agrees to parameters that would make the chip the size of a dinner plate. Fortunately, TSMC's engineer is also tired and asks, "Did you mean millimeters or meters?" Crisis averted. November 2006. The GeForce 8800 GTX launches. It's huge. 10.5 inches long, requires 2 power connectors, and sounds like a hairdryer when under load. PC Gamer calls it comically large. But the performance is otherworldly. It's 60% faster than anything ATI has. It runs Crysis. Yes, but can it run Crysis? Crysis, at playable frame rates. It supports DirectX 10, which doesn't even have games yet. It's so far ahead of its time that developers don't know what to do with all the power. But hidden in the driver download, not mentioned in any marketing material, is CUDA support. The 8800 GTX isn't just a graphics card, it's a supercomputer that happens to be good at games. A parallel processing monster disguised as a gaming accessory. The first CUDA developers are mostly graduate students who can't afford real supercomputers. They buy $600 gaming cards and turn them into scientific instruments. One PhD student at Stanford uses an 8800 GTX to simulate protein folding. Another at MIT uses it for climate modelling. They're getting supercomputer performance for the price of a PlayStation 3. The academic papers start trickling in. 100x speed up in molecular dynamics using consumer graphics hardware. Real-time MRI reconstruction on GPU. Astrophysical N-body simulation on graphics processing units. Each paper is another proof point that CUDA works, but the market doesn't care. Wall Street is still evaluating NVIDIA as a gaming company. Fun fact, in 2007, the fastest supercomputer in the world was IBM's Blue Gene/L at 478 teraflops. A modern NVIDIA data center GPU does 2000 teraflops. Your gaming PC is literally more powerful than what governments use to simulate nuclear weapons. Jensen is frustrated but not deterred. He starts what becomes known as the CUDA Missionary Program. NVIDIA engineers are sent to universities to teach CUDA programming for free. They bring pizza, GPUs, and the evangelical fervour of people who've seen the future and desperately want others to see it too. The adoption is glacial. For every convert, there are hundreds who stick with CPU programming because it's familiar, even if it's slower. It's like watching people choose to walk instead of drive because they're comfortable with walking. A TI, now AMD after a $5.4 billion acquisition, launches their own GPU computing initiative called Stream. It's technically similar to CUDA, but with worse tools, worse documentation, and the enthusiasm of someone forced to attend their ex's wedding. It fails so spectacularly that AMD eventually adopts CUDA's approach. Back at NVIDIA, the CUDA team is hemorrhaging money. The free software, free training, and free support are costing millions per quarter with essentially zero return. The CFO shows Jensen a chart where the CUDA line is red and going down while everything else is green and going up. "How long do we fund this?" she asks. "Until it works," Jensen replies, which in corporate speak means indefinitely, and please stop asking. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source, Stanford's Folding at Home project. They release a GPU client that lets anyone contribute their graphics card to protein folding research. Suddenly, gaming PCs around the world are curing cancer while their owners sleep. The PR value alone is worth millions. Then Bitcoin happens. In 2010, someone figures out that GPUs are really good at the SHA-256 calculations required for Bitcoin mining. Suddenly, every 8,800 GTX on eBay is being bought by cryptocurrency miners. NVIDIA accidentally created the perfect mining hardware without knowing cryptocurrency would exist. The mining boom is a double-edged sword. GPU sales explode, but gamers can't buy graphics cards because miners are buying them all. NVIDIA is making money, but alienating their core customer base. It's like being a drug dealer whose product accidentally cures cancer. Profitable but morally confusing. Would you have held on to CUDA for 4 years with no profit? Comment if you have diamond hands, if you would have killed it after year 1. By 2010, CUDA has 100,000 registered developers. It's still not profitable, but Jensen sees something others don't. Exponential growth in a niche market. Every supercomputing conference now has CUDA presentations. Every university with a computer science program teaches CUDA. It's becoming infrastructure, and infrastructure always wins eventually. The GeForce 8800 goes down in history as one of the most important graphics cards ever made. Not because it was the fastest, though it was. Not because it enabled DirectX 10, though it did. But because it was the first mass-market parallel processor. It democratized supercomputing without anyone realizing it was happening. Years later, Jensen will say the 8800 GTX was the most important product NVIDIA ever made. Not because of what it was, but because of what it enabled. It was the bridge between graphics and computing, between games and science, between what NVIDIA was and what it would become. You're standing in Oak Ridge, National Laboratory in 2008, and the room temperature is approximately absolute zero, because the air conditioning required to cool the supercomputers could freeze hell itself. You're about to pitch something that sounds insane. A graphics card without display outputs. It's like selling a car without wheels. Technically possible, but missing the point entirely. The Tesla line, yes, named after Nikola, and no, not related to Elon's cars, this is 2008, the Roadster barely exists, is NVIDIA's first pure computing product. No gaming pretense, no display outputs, just raw parallel processing power for people who think in equations instead of frames per second. The first Tesla, the C870, is basically a GeForce 8800 with the display outputs removed and the price tripled. It's the same chip, same memory, same everything, except it costs $1,500 instead of $500 because it has professional drivers and support. It's the kind of pricing strategy that makes Martin Shkreli look reasonable. The meeting at Oak Ridge is with people whose job titles include words like computational and theoretical, and who casually discuss problems that would make normal computers cry. They're currently using a Cray XT5 supercomputer that cost $100 million and requires its own power plant. So you're saying, the lead scientist asks, adjusting glasses that probably cost more than your monthly salary, that we can get similar performance from graphics cards? Not graphics cards, you correct, because branding is important. Tesla computing modules. He looks at the Tesla C870 on the table. It looks exactly like a graphics card because it is one, just with delusions of grandeur and a premium price tag. And these cost how much? $1,500 per unit, but you'll need thousands of them. Here's the beautiful thing about selling to government laboratories. They have budgets that make venture capitalists weep with envy. They spend $100 million on supercomputers the way normal people spend $100 on groceries, regularly and without much thought. The demo is running a climate simulation that would normally take the Cray a week to complete. The Tesla cluster, really just a bunch of graphics cards in a really expensive box, does it in 6 hours. The scientists lean forward like they're watching a magic trick, which technically they are. The magic is parallel processing, and the trick is convincing them it's worth millions of dollars. Back at NVIDIA, the Tesla division is the weird kid at the corporate family dinner. The GeForce team brings in billions. The Quadro team brings in hundreds of millions. The Tesla team brings in potential. Lots and lots of potential, but potential doesn't pay salaries. Jensen is defending Tesla to the board again. The presentation has charts showing the total addressable market TAM for high-performance computing. It's huge, billions of dollars. The problem is that NVIDIA's share of that market is approximately 0.01%, which rounds down to why are we doing this? Supercomputing is a $10 billion market, Jensen says. How much did Tesla make last quarter? A board member asks. 8 million, Jensen replies. That's not even a rounding error. Yet, Jensen adds, with the confidence of someone who's either prescient or delusional. The Tesla S1070 launches in 2008. It's 4 GPUs in a 1U server chassis that sounds like a jet engine and draws enough power to run a small apartment. It costs $8,000 and requires special cooling, special power, and a special kind of insanity to purchase. Universities love it. For the price of one traditional supercomputer node, they can get 10 times the performance. Graduate students who previously had to wait weeks for computation time can now run simulations in hours. It's democratizing supercomputing in the same way that guns democratized violence. Suddenly, everyone can play. The first major commercial win comes from the oil industry again. Schlumberger, the oil services company with a name nobody can pronounce correctly, buys $20 million worth of Tesla systems for seismic processing. They're using gaming technology to find oil. The irony is delicious, using silicon to find petroleum, the future helping extract the past. Pause and think about this. The same technology that renders your Fortnite skins is being used to find oil deposits, model climate change, and simulate nuclear weapons. It's like discovering your PlayStation can also cure cancer. Technically true, but ethically complicated. The financial industry discovers Tesla next. High-frequency trading firms realize that GPU computing can price derivatives faster than CPUs. Milliseconds matter when you're front-running trades, and Tesla gives them those milliseconds. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse. They're all buying Tesla systems to model risk faster than their competitors. One hedge fund manager, whose cocaine budget probably exceeds Tesla's R&D budget, tells you, "I don't understand how it works, but it makes money faster, so buy me more." The pharmaceutical industry jumps in. Molecular dynamics simulations that took months now take days. Drug discovery accelerates. Novartis, Pfizer, Merck, they're all buying Tesla systems. The same technology that makes video game water look realistic is now helping design drugs that might cure cancer. But here's the dirty secret. Tesla is still losing money. The R&D costs are astronomical. The market education costs are worse. For every successful sale, there are hundreds of conversations that end with "interesting, but we'll stick with CPUs." The breakthrough comes from an unexpected place. China. The Chinese government decides they want to build the world's fastest supercomputer. National pride is at stake. They choose Tesla GPUs as the acceleration technology. The Tianhe 1AA supercomputer, using 7,168 Tesla GPUs, becomes the world's fastest computer in 2010. Suddenly, Tesla isn't just an interesting experiment, it's the technology powering the world's fastest computer. Every government, every laboratory, every university wants to know about GPU computing. The phone doesn't stop ringing. Jensen calls an all-hands meeting. "Remember when everyone thought CUDA was stupid?" he asks. "Remember when Tesla was a waste of money? Well, we just built the world's fastest computer. Anyone still think we're wasting our time?" The room erupts. Engineers who've been working on Tesla for years with little recognition are suddenly heroes. The guy who designed the interconnect technology is crying. The woman who wrote the CUDA libraries is getting high fives from people she's never met. But Jensen, always paranoid, adds, "This is just the beginning. The real revolution hasn't started yet." He's right. In a few years, 2 researchers at the University of Toronto will use CUDA and Tesla to train something called AlexNet, and everything will change. But we're not there yet. Right now, in 2010, NVIDIA is still a gaming company that happens to sell some computing products. The Tesla brand will eventually be replaced by something simply called NVIDIA Data Center GPUs, but the foundation is laid. The infrastructure is built. The ecosystem exists. NVIDIA has successfully convinced the world that graphics cards can be supercomputers. You're sitting in NVIDIA's mobile division in 2008, and the whiteboards are covered with drawings of smartphones that don't exist yet. The iPhone has just changed everything. Android is being born, and Jensen has decided that NVIDIA needs to be in mobile. It's like watching a whale decide it wants to be a bird. Theoretically, Evolution supports it, but practically it's going to be ugly. Tegra is NVIDIA's mobile processor, and the name sounds like either a pharmaceutical drug or a failed Star Trek character. It's an ARM-based system-on-chip that promises to bring GeForce quality graphics to phones. The demos are impressive. Full 3D games running on prototype phones, HD video playback, the works. The problem is that NVIDIA knows nothing about mobile. They know about high performance, high power consumption, and high prices. Mobile needs low power, low cost, and the ability to not catch fire in your pocket. It's like asking a Formula One team to build a Prius. They understand cars, but not those kinds of cars. The Tegra team is housed in a separate building, partly for focus and partly because the main campus doesn't want to be associated with what everyone privately calls Jensen's folly. The team is a mixture of NVIDIA veterans who drew the short straw and mobile experts hired from Qualcomm, who already look like they regret their decision. Fun fact, the original Tegra consumed so much power that test phones needed external battery packs. It was basically a portable hand warmer that occasionally made calls. The first Tegra chip, the APX 2500, launches in 2008. It's powerful, impressive, and absolutely nobody wants it. Phone manufacturers look at the power consumption numbers and laugh. One executive from a major phone company, who shall remain nameless but rhymes with Samsung, literally laughs during the presentation. This chip would drain our battery in 2 hours, he says. But look at the graphics performance, the NVIDIA sales guy protests. Our customers want phones that last all day, not phones that can play Crysis for 30 minutes before dying. Microsoft's Zune HD becomes the first and only major product to use the first Tegra. Yes, the Zune. Microsoft's iPod killer that was about as successful as a chocolate teapot. It's like being the best player on the worst team. Technically an achievement, but nobody cares. Back at headquarters, Jensen is doubling down. Mobile is the future, he says at every meeting with the conviction of someone who's either visionary or in denial. The mobile division's losses are mounting, $100 million or $200 million heading toward $1 billion. Tegra 2 launches in 2010 with great fanfare. It's dual core when most mobile processors are single core. It can run full 1080p video, it's in the Motorola Atrix, the LG Optimus 2X, and that's about it. Qualcomm's Snapdragon, which is inferior technically but superior in every practical way, dominates the market. The mobile team is in crisis mode. They're working 20-hour days trying to reduce power consumption. One engineer creates a chart showing that at current improvement rates, Tegra will match Snapdragon's efficiency in 2047. The chart is meant as a joke, but nobody laughs because it's probably accurate. Would you keep pouring money into a failing division? Comment if you believe in long-term vision, if you know when to cut your losses. Then NVIDIA gets a lifeline from an unexpected source: tablets. Tablets don't have the same power constraints as phones. They have bigger batteries, more cooling, and users expect shorter battery life. Tegra 3, with its 4+1 architecture, 4 high-performance cores plus 1 efficiency core, because nothing says elegant design like +1, finds its way into the Google Nexus 7 and Asus Transformer tablets. For about 6 months in 2012, it looks like NVIDIA might actually succeed in mobile. Tegra 3 tablets are selling well. Reviews are positive. The mobile division stops hemorrhaging money quite as fast. There's talk of Tegra 4, Tegra 5, a whole roadmap of mobile dominance. Then Apple releases the iPad with Retina display and their A5X chip, and it's game over. The A5X destroys Tegra 3 in both performance and efficiency. It's like watching a professional boxer fight a talented amateur. Technically they're both boxing, but one is clearly in a different league. Apple's vertical integration, where they control both hardware and software, gives them advantages NVIDIA can't match. Qualcomm, meanwhile, has figured out integrated LTE modems. Every phone manufacturer wants LTE. Tegra doesn't have it. It's like selling cars without air conditioning in Arizona. Technically possible, but practically stupid. The Tegra 4 launch in 2013 is sad. The announcement at CES has all the energy of a funeral where nobody liked the deceased. The chip is powerful, but nobody cares. Phone manufacturers have standardized on Qualcomm. NVIDIA is offering a better engine for a race nobody's running. One particularly brutal meeting with a phone manufacturer goes like this. Tegra 4 is 40% faster than Snapdragon 800. Does it have integrated LTE? No, but then we're not interested. But the graphics performance? Our customers don't care. They care about battery life and LTE. The Shield handheld gaming device becomes NVIDIA's attempt to create their own market for Tegra. It's a chunky Android gaming device that looks like an Xbox controller ate a smartphone. It's actually quite good. Great performance, good controls, innovative streaming features. It sells about 12 units. Not really 12, but close enough that NVIDIA stops reporting numbers. You're in Kyoto, Japan, in 2014, sitting in Nintendo's headquarters, and everything is exactly as weird as you'd expect. There's a Mario statue in the lobby that costs more than your house. The meeting room has traditional Japanese sliding doors next to a flat-screen TV showing Zelda concept art. The executives are wearing suits that somehow look both conservative and playful, like business formal designed by Shigeru Miyamoto. Nintendo needs a chip for their next console. The Wii U is dying faster than a Game of Thrones character in Season 8. They need something revolutionary, portable, and powerful enough to run real games, but efficient enough to work on battery power. They need, in other words, exactly what Tegra was supposed to be, but never quite achieved. The NVIDIA team presenting to Nintendo is basically the last survivors of the mobile division. They've watched colleagues transferred to other divisions, budgets slashed, and dreams crushed. This Nintendo deal isn't just important, it's existential. If this fails, Tegra dies. Satoru Iwata, Nintendo's president, who would sadly pass away the next year, asks through a translator, "Can Tegra run our games at acceptable quality while maintaining battery life for portable gaming?" The honest answer is probably not, but the NVIDIA team says absolutely, because at this point what do they have to lose? The custom Tegra X one-chip Nintendo wants is basically a greatest hits compilation of everything NVIDIA learned from failing in mobile. It's powerful, but not too powerful. It's efficient, but not class-leading. It's the mediocre middle ground that nobody wanted in phones, but turns out to be perfect for a hybrid console. Here's a business lesson they don't teach at Stanford. Sometimes your biggest success comes from repurposing your biggest failure. It's like finding out your terrible novel makes great toilet paper, not what you intended, but profitable nonetheless. Back in Santa, Clara Jensen announces the Nintendo partnership to the company. The mobile team, what's left of it, actually cheers. Not because it's a massive win, Nintendo's volumes are tiny compared to smartphones, but because it means they weren't completely wrong. Tegra has found a home, even if it's not the home they expected. The Switch development is complicated by Nintendo being Nintendo. They want custom features that make no sense. They insist on specific power profiles that require rewriting the firmware. They demand price points that make the already thin margins microscopic. Working with Nintendo is like working with a genius child, brilliant but exhausting. March 2017, the Nintendo Switch launches. It's a hybrid console that can dock to a TV or be played portably. The marketing is brilliant, the games are excellent, and at its heart, beating like a refugee from the smartphone wars, is Tegra. The Switch is a massive success. It sells 130 million units over its lifetime. That's 130 million Tegra chips finding homes after being rejected by every phone manufacturer on Earth. It's like being turned down by every modelling agency, then becoming a successful character actor. Different kind of success, but success nonetheless. The mobile team, now just a handful of engineers maintaining Nintendo support, has a celebration dinner at a sushi place in Santa Clara. It's not a victory celebration, more like a "we survived" gathering. Someone makes a toast to Tegra. Too power hungry for phones, too late for tablets, but just right for Nintendo. Jensen's reflection on the mobile adventure is surprisingly philosophical. We lost $1 billion learning what we're not good at. That's actually valuable knowledge. But the real lesson from Tegra isn't about mobile processors. It's about parallel computing at low power. All that work trying to make GPUs efficient for phones, it becomes crucial for data centers. The power optimization techniques developed for Tegra become essential for AI training clusters that consume megawatts. The Shield products, the handheld, the tablet, the TV box, all commercial failures become testbeds for streaming technology. GeForce Now, NVIDIA's cloud gaming service, is built on the bones of Shield streaming. The failure becomes the foundation for something else. You're standing in the NVIDIA automotive lab in 2015, and there's a car in the middle of the room with more cables coming out of it, than a patient in intensive care. The car thinks it's driving through San Francisco while actually sitting perfectly still in Santa Clara. The Tegra-powered computer in its trunk is trying to understand the world through cameras, and currently it's convinced that a stop sign is a small child. Progress. The automotive pivot starts not because NVIDIA wanted to be in cars, but because they had all this Tegra inventory and needed anyone to buy it. Car manufacturers, it turns out, are desperate for computing power. Modern cars have more code than fighter jets, and they need processors to run it all. The first automotive win is infotainment systems. Audi decides to use Tegra 3 for their multimedia interface. It's not sexy, it's literally running the equivalent of a tablet interface in a dashboard, but it's revenue, and the mobile division needs revenue like a drowning person needs air. But then something interesting happens. Car manufacturers start asking about computer vision. Can Tegra process camera feeds in real time? Can it detect objects? Can it help with parking? The answer is sort of, which in automotive terms is close enough to start development. Tesla calls, not for infotainment, but for autopilot. The meeting with Elon Musk is exactly as weird as you'd expect. He shows up late, immediately starts redesigning NVIDIA's chip architecture on a whiteboard, declares half of it unnecessary, then asks if NVIDIA can deliver something that doesn't exist yet in 6 months for a price that barely covers manufacturing. We need to process 8 camera feeds simultaneously, Elon says, run neural networks in real time, and do it all while consuming less than 30 watts. That's impossible with current technology, the NVIDIA engineer responds. I don't care about current, I care about 6 months from now. This is the thing about working with Elon Musk. He operates on must time, where impossible things are merely difficult and difficult things should have been done yesterday. NVIDIA creates a custom version of Tegra called Drive PX for Tesla. It's basically 2 Tegra X, 1 chips, glued together with software that's held together by hope and caffeine. It shouldn't work, but it does, because when you're powering the future of transportation, shouldn't work is just another engineering constraint to overcome. The automotive division, staffed mostly by refugees from the mobile division, suddenly has purpose again. They're not making chips for phones that nobody wants. They're teaching cars to see. It's the same technology, same architecture, but the application makes all the difference. Then Uber's self-driving car kills someone in Arizona. The entire autonomous vehicle industry goes into crisis mode. Suddenly, everyone realizes that teaching cars to drive is harder than teaching humans to drive, mainly because humans don't segfault when they see something unexpected. NVIDIA's response is to double down. They announce Drive, a GX, a platform that's essentially a supercomputer for cars. It can process 320 trillion operations per second, which sounds impressive until you realize that human brains do about 38 quadrillion calculations per second, while also maintaining consciousness and wondering what's for lunch. Every major car manufacturer starts partnering with NVIDIA. Mercedes, Volvo, Toyota, they all want drive platforms. Not because they necessarily believe in full self-driving, but because they need to hedge their bets. It's like buying insurance for a future that might not happen, but probably will. The automotive labs expand. NVIDIA builds a massive data center just to train neural networks for cars. They create simulation environments where virtual cars drive millions of miles, crashing into virtual pedestrians and learning from virtual mistakes. It's like The Matrix, but for teaching cars not to kill people. One engineer working on the simulation platform describes it. We're basically creating a universe where cars can learn to drive by dying millions of times without actually hurting anyone. It's like Buddhism for automobiles. By 2018, Tegra, the failed mobile chip, has found new life in automotive. The same architecture that couldn't compete with Qualcomm in phones is now powering the future of transportation. Drive revenue hits $500 million annually. Not huge by NVIDIA standards, but for a division that was nearly killed, it's redemption. Jensen's comment on the automotive business is typically cryptic. We failed at mobile because we were solving the wrong problem. Cars don't care about battery life when they have alternators. Sometimes you need to find the right problem for your solution. The real victory isn't the revenue, it's the data. Every car running NVIDIA Drive generates training data for neural networks. Every mile driven is teaching NVIDIA's AI how to see, how to understand, how to predict. This data will become invaluable when the real AI revolution starts. which is happening right now, in 2012, in a lab at the University of Toronto, where a professor named Geoffrey Hinton and his student Alex Krzyzewski are about to use NVIDIA GPUs to break the world. You're in a cluttered lab at the University of Toronto in 2012, and Geoffrey Hinton, who looks like Santa Claus if Santa studied neural networks instead of toy distribution, is staring at a computer screen showing impossible numbers. His student, Alex Krzyzewski, has just trained a neural network on two GTX 580 graphics cards that performs better than anything anyone has ever seen. The ImageNet competition is the World Cup of computer vision. Teams from around the world compete to correctly identify objects in millions of images. The previous best error rate was 26%. AlexNet running on NVIDIA GPUs just scored 15%. It's like someone showing up to a marathon and finishing in half the time of the world record. Physically shouldn't be possible, but there it is. The computer vision community loses its collective mind. Decades of handcrafted features and careful algorithm design have just been beaten by a neural network that learned everything by itself, powered by graphics cards designed for playing World of Warcraft. At NVIDIA headquarters, Jensen gets a call from someone in marketing. Some researchers in Canada used our gaming GPUs to win ImageNet by a huge margin. How huge? They nearly halved the error rate, Jensen pauses. He understands immediately what this means. It's not about ImageNet, it's about everything. If neural networks can learn to see using GPUs, they can learn to do anything. Here's the moment where NVIDIA's story pivots from graphics company that does some computing to AI company that happens to make graphics cards. Nobody realizes it yet, but the next decade has just been decided by two Canadians and some gaming hardware. The phone starts ringing. Every AI researcher in the world wants to know about CUDA. Google calls, Facebook calls, Microsoft calls, they all want to know the same thing. How many GPUs can we buy and how fast can you deliver them? Andrew Ng at Stanford, who later leads AI efforts at Google and Baidu, publishes a paper showing that 12 NVIDIA GPUs can train neural networks 100 times faster than CPUs. The paper spreads through the AI community like wildfire. Suddenly every graduate student needs a GPU. The run on graphics cards is insane. Computer stores can't keep GTX Titans in stock because AI researchers are buying them all. Gaming forums are full of complaints about those AI nerds driving up prices. One gamer posts, "I just want to play Skyrim, but these machine learning people keep buying all the graphics cards to teach computers to recognize cats." NVIDIA's data center division, which has been losing money for years selling Tesla cards to supercomputing centers, suddenly can't manufacture fast enough. Orders are coming in faster than they can be filled. Companies are literally sending employees to Best Buy to buy gaming cards because they can't wait for Tesla shipments. Jensen calls an emergency meeting. "We need to pivot. Now, everything is about AI." "But we're a graphics company," someone protests. "Were?" Jensen corrects. "We're a graphics company. Now we're an ASI company. The graphics were just training wheels." The pivot is total. Resources are shifted from graphics development to AI acceleration. The CUDA team, formerly the weird kids nobody understood, are suddenly the most important people in the company. Engineers who spent years optimizing game rendering are now optimizing matrix multiplication. Would you bet your entire company on a technology trend that's 2 weeks old? Comment if you're ready to gamble, if you prefer stability. Google Brain buys 10,000 NVIDIA GPUs to train neural networks. They're building server rooms that look like Bitcoin mining operations, but instead of mining cryptocurrency, they're mining intelligence. The power consumption is so high, they need special cooling systems that could freeze a small lake. Facebook creates their AI research lab and immediately orders thousands of GPUs. Yann LeCun, their AI chief and one of the godfathers of deep learning, says publicly, "NVIDIA GPUs have been essential to the progress of deep learning." The stock market starts to notice. NVIDIA's stock price, which has been bouncing between $10 to $20 for years, starts climbing. $30, $40, $50. Analysts don't understand what's happening, they're still modelling. NVIDIA is a gaming company, missing the AI revolution happening in plain sight. One analyst report from 2013 says, "We see limited upside in NVIDIA's data center business." That analyst now presumably hides under a desk whenever NVIDIA is mentioned, considering the data center business would grow to $15 billion annually. The deep learning frameworks all optimize for CUDA. TensorFlow, PyTorch, Caffe, they all run best, or only, on NVIDIA GPUs. It's not a monopoly exactly, but it's close. AMD tries to compete with OpenCL. Intel tries with something. Nobody cares. CUDA has won before the race even started. Every tech company starts an AI division. Every AI division needs GPUs. Every GPU sale makes NVIDIA stronger. It's a virtuous cycle that prints money. The gaming business, which was 90% of revenue, shrinks to less than 50%. Not because gaming shrinks, but because everything else explodes. Universities can't graduate deep learning students fast enough. Every tech company is hiring anyone who knows CUDA and PyTorch. Salaries for AI engineers hit $500,000, then $1 million for the best researchers. It's a gold rush, and NVIDIA is selling all the pickaxes. You're in NVIDIA's headquarters in 2016, and Jensen is about to announce something insane. A $129,000 desktop computer. Not a supercomputer, not a server rack. A desktop computer that costs more than a house in most of America. The marketing team thinks he's lost his mind. The sales team is updating their resumes. The engineering team is too tired to care. The DGX-1 is 8 Tesla P100 GPUs connected with NVIDIA Link, delivering 170 teraflops of deep learning performance in a box you can, theoretically, put on your desk if your desk is reinforced steel and you don't mind the sound of jet engines. It's not just powerful, it's absurdly, unnecessarily, gloriously overpowered. Who's going to buy a $129,000 computer, the CFO asks. Everyone, Jensen replies with the confidence of someone who's either prescient or psychotic. The first DGX-1 is hand-delivered by Jensen himself to OpenAI. There's a photo of him handing it to Elon Musk, both of them grinning like they're exchanging nuclear launch codes. The computer is so heavy it takes 4 people to carry it. The power cable is thicker than a garden hose. The reception should be mockery. $129,000 for a computer? In 2016? That's insane. You can buy a small data center for that. You can hire 2 engineers for a year. You can buy 129 regular computers and duct tape them together. But orders start coming in immediately. Every AI lab wants one. Every tech company wants 10. Every hedge fund using AI wants 20. The waitlist grows to 6 months. NVIDIA can't build them fast enough. They're selling $129,000 computers faster than Dell sells $500 laptops. Here's what nobody understood. Time is more valuable than money in AI research. If a DGX-1 trains your model in 1 week instead of 1 month, that 3-week advantage is worth millions in competitive advantage. It's like selling time machines to people racing against time. The DGX becomes the status symbol of serious AI research. If your company doesn't have a DGX, are you even doing AI? Universities take photos with their DGX like it's a celebrity. Companies put them in glass cases in their lobbies. It's conspicuous consumption for nerds. Baidu buys dozens. Tencent buys hundreds. Amazon orders so many that NVIDIA has to allocate production quotas. It's like the early days of Ferrari. More demand than supply, and the price just makes it more desirable. The second generation, DGX2, costs $399,000. $400,000 for a computer. It sells out immediately. The DGX2 has 16 GPUs, 2 petaflops of performance, and requires 10 kilowatts of power. Turning it on dims the lights in the building. It sounds like an airplane taking off. It generates enough heat to warm a small apartment. Companies buy them anyway. One startup founder mortgages his house to buy a DGX2. My wife thinks I'm insane, he says, but our natural language model trains 10 times faster than our competitors. We'll make it back in 3 months. He's right. His startup gets acquired by Google for $100 million a year later. The DGX2 pays for itself 250 times over. His wife presumably forgives him. The DGX Station, a budget version at only $49,000, launches for individual researchers. Because apparently individual researchers just have $49,000 lying around. It's like selling personal jets, technically personal, but requiring corporate money. universities start writing grants specifically for DGX systems. Equipment 1, DGX 2, $399,000 becomes a common line item in NSF proposals. The government starts buying them for national labs. The military wants them for classified projects that definitely aren't Skynet related. Would you spend $400,000 on a computer? Comment if you're ready for AI supremacy, if you'd rather have a house. The software stack that comes with DGX is the real magic. It's not just hardware, it's an entire AI development environment. Pre-installed frameworks, optimized libraries, one-click deployment. It's like buying a race car that comes with a pit crew. Competitors try to respond. AMD announces something. Intel announces something. Google builds TPUs. Amazon builds Inferentia. But they're all missing the point. NVIDIA isn't selling hardware. They're selling time. They're selling competitive advantage. They're selling the ability to do things that were impossible yesterday. The DGX success transforms NVIDIA's business model. They're no longer just a chip company selling to board partners. They're a systems company selling directly to enterprises. The margins are insane. The profit per unit is higher than most companies' annual revenue. Jensen's strategy becomes clear. Own the entire stack. The chips, GPU, the interconnect, NVLink, the software, CUDA, the frameworks, CUDNN, and now the systems, DGX. It's vertical integration that would make Rockefeller jealous. By 2018, every major AI breakthrough is happening on NVIDIA hardware. GPT is trained on NVIDIA. BERT is trained on NVIDIA. Every paper at NeurIPS mentions NVIDIA GPUs in the acknowledgements. It's like every Olympic athlete thanking the same shoe company, except the shoes cost $400,000. The data center business hits $3 billion annually, then $5 billion, then $10 billion. The growth rate is so high that Excel runs out of cells to model it. CFOs at other companies look at NVIDIA's numbers and assume they're typos. You're in a gaming forum in 2017, and the rage is palpable. Someone posts a picture of empty shelves where graphics cards should be. The title, "Thanks Miners." The comments are a masterclass in creative profanity. Gamers who just want to play PUBG at decent frame rates are finding out that every graphics card in existence has been bought by someone mining Ethereum. The crypto boom hits NVIDIA like a tornado made of money. Suddenly, every GPU is a money printer. Buy a graphics card for $500, mine Ethereum, make $20 a day. It's like discovering your PlayStation can literally print cash while you sleep. Mining farms spring up everywhere. Warehouses in China filled with thousands of GPUs running 24/7. Basements in suburban America turned into crypto mines. College dorms with suspicious power usage and the sound of fans running constantly. One MIT student runs a mining operation so large that it trips the dorm's circuit breakers and gets him expelled. NVIDIA's position on mining is complicated. Publicly, they say they're a gaming company and miners are a distraction. Privately, they're selling every GPU they can manufacture, and the stock price is going vertical. It's like being a pacifist arms dealer, philosophically opposed but practically profiting. The GTX 1070, which should cost $380, is selling for $900 on eBay. The GTX 1080 Ti reaches $1,500. Graphics cards become more valuable than the computers they go into. It's absurd, it's unsustainable, it's incredibly profitable. Here's a moral dilemma. You're making record profits, but your core customers, gamers who built your company, can't buy your products. Do you limit sales to miners? Do you make mining specific cards? Or do you just count the money and hope it sorts itself out? Jensen tries to thread the needle. NVIDIA releases mining-specific GPUs with no display outputs, hoping to redirect miners away from gaming cards. Miners don't care. They buy everything. Gaming cards, mining cards, professional cards. If it has CUDA cores, they want it. The gaming community's anger reaches critical mass. Reddit threads about NVIDIA turn toxic. YouTube channels that used to praise NVIDIA now make videos titled "NVIDIA betrays gamers for crypto profits." One popular streamer says, "NVIDIA would sell GPUs to Satan if he paid in Bitcoin." Then NVIDIA makes a fatal error. They assume crypto demand is permanent. They order massive amounts of inventory. They ramp production. They guide revenue projections assuming mining demand continues. The stock price hits $250, valuing NVIDIA at $150 billion. Everyone's getting rich. What could go wrong? Ethereum announces they're moving to proof of stake. Bitcoin crashes from $20,000 to $3,000. The crypto mining boom dies overnight. Not a slow decline, a complete collapse. Like someone turned off a money printer mid-bill. Suddenly all those mining GPUs flood the used market. eBay is full of GTX 1070s for $200. Lightly used, the listings say. Neglecting to mention lightly used means running at 100% for 2 years straight in a warehouse in Mongolia. NVIDIA is stuck with massive inventory. Warehouses full of GPUs nobody wants, because everyone can buy used mining cards for half price. The gaming market is saturated. The mining market is dead. Revenue projections are fantasy. The stock crashes from $250 to $140 in 3 months. Analysts who are projecting infinite growth suddenly discover gravity exists. One particularly brutal report states, NVIDIA confused a gold rush with a business model. The Q4 2018 earnings call is a disaster. Jensen has to explain why revenue missed projections by $500 million. He uses phrases like crypto hangover and inventory normalization, which is corporate speak for "we fucked up." We thought crypto was additive to gaming, Jensen admits. It was substitutional. Translation. We thought miners were new customers. They were actually stealing cards from gamers, and now nobody wants to buy anything. The next year is brutal. NVIDIA has to work through the inventory. They can't launch new products because the market is flooded with used cards. The RTX 20 series launches to lukewarm reception, because why pay $1,200 for an RTX 2080 Ti when a used GTX 1080 Ti for $400 performs almost as well? But here's where Jensen's paranoia pays off. While everyone's focused on the crypto disaster, NVIDIA is quietly investing billions in AI. The gaming division is bleeding, but the data center division is growing. Every quarter, AI revenue increases while gaming stagnates. By 2019, the crypto hangover is clearing. The used cards are finally absorbed. Gamers can actually buy graphics cards at retail prices. The RTX 30 series is in development with realistic expectations. The healing begins. Then COVID hits, and everything goes insane again. But that's a different kind of insane. The everyone's stuck at home and needs a graphics card kind of insane, which NVIDIA is much better equipped to handle. Looking back, the crypto boom bust teaches NVIDIA a valuable lesson. Be careful what you wish for. Infinite demand sounds great until it isn't. Gold rushes end, bubbles pop. But the underlying technology, the GPUs, the parallel processing, the CUDA ecosystem, that's permanent. Jensen's reflection on the crypto chaos is philosophical. We got distracted by easy money and forgot our mission. Gamers built this company. I will grow it. Crypto was just noise. But that noise generated billions in revenue that funded AI research. So maybe it wasn't all bad. In Silicon Valley, even disasters can be profitable if you survive them. You're standing in NVIDIA's headquarters on November 30th, 2022, and every phone in the building is ringing simultaneously. OpenAI has just released ChatGPT, and the world has collectively lost its mind. Every CEO, every board, every investor wants to know the same thing. How do we do AI, and how many NVIDIA chips do we need? The H100, NVIDIA's latest data center GPU, costs $30,000 per chip. Not per system, per chip. It's the size of a pizza box, consumes 700 watts of power, and delivers 4 petaflops of AI performance. It's the most expensive single processor ever sold commercially, and there's a 2-year waiting list. Microsoft orders $10 billion worth, not million, billion. With a B, they're building Azure AI infrastructure to support OpenAI, and they need every H100 NVIDIA can manufacture. It's the largest single purchase order in semiconductor history. The NVIDIA sales team, accustomed to negotiating over hundreds of units, is suddenly dealing with orders for hundreds of thousands. One sales rep describes it. It's like selling lemonade from a stand and suddenly Coca-Cola wants to buy your entire neighborhood's water supply. Here's the insane part. Companies are buying H100s without even knowing what they'll do with them. It's strategic FOMO. Fear of missing out on AI. Better to have the chips and figure out the use case later than to need them and be on a 2-year waiting list. Oracle's Larry Ellison calls Jensen directly. I need 10,000 H100s. Larry, what are you going to do with 10,000 H100s? I don't know yet, but I know I need them before Amazon gets them. This is the new reality. Billionaires fighting over graphics cards like Black Friday shoppers over flat-screen TVs. Except the TVs cost $30,000 and can think. Google, panicked by ChatGPT's success, orders billions in H100 for Bard development. Amazon orders billions for AWS. Meta orders billions for something. Everyone's spending like the AI revolution ends tomorrow, and whoever has the most GPUs wins. The production constraints are insane. TSMC, manufacturing the H100 on their 4nm process, literally cannot make them fast enough. Each chip takes 3 months to manufacture, requires hundreds of steps, and has yields so low that most of them don't work. The working ones are more valuable than gold, literally. An H100 weighs 3 pounds and costs $30,000. Gold is about $2,000 per pound. The H100 is literally worth 5 times its weight in gold. Jensen becomes the most powerful person in tech. Not because he's the richest, though he's getting there, but because he controls the supply of the one thing every tech company desperately needs. He's like a drug dealer, but the drug is intelligence, and the addicts are Fortune 500 companies. The allocation meetings at NVIDIA are like the UN Security Council. Who gets chips? How many? When? These decisions literally determine which companies will lead in AI and which will fall behind. One NVIDIA employee jokes, "We should just start our own country. We already control more economic power than most nations." Pause and think. One company, making graphics cards, now determines the future of artificial intelligence for the entire planet. How did we get here? Comment if you think this is progress, if this terrifies you. Startups are getting creative. One YC company literally sends their founder to camp outside NVIDIA's headquarters, hoping to intercept someone who might sell them chips. Another startup offers equity to any NVIDIA employee who can get them H100s. It's the California gold rush, except the gold is silicon and the 49ers have computer science degrees. The cloud providers start rationing. AWS limits H100 instance time. Azure requires approval for large allocations. Google Cloud has a waiting list just to get on the waiting list. It's harder to get GPU time than it is to get into Harvard. Universities are begging for chips. MIT, Stanford, Berkeley. They're all trying to train the next generation of AI researchers on hardware they can't afford. One professor says, "We're teaching students to build AI on simulations because we can't afford actual hardware. It's like teaching surgery on drawings." The H100 architecture is a masterpiece of engineering. 80 billion transistors, 188 streaming multiprocessors, 456 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. The specifications read like science fiction. It can run AI models that would have required an entire data center just 5 years ago. But the real magic is the software stack. CUDA has evolved into an entire ecosystem. CUDNN for deep learning, TensorRT for inference, NCCL for multi-GPU communication. It's not just hardware, it's an entire platform that nobody else can replicate. AMD tries with the MI300, Intel tries with Gaudi, Google has TPUs, Amazon has Trainium. But they're all missing something. The decades of software development, the millions of developers who know CUDA, the ecosystem that makes NVIDIA not just better but essential. The stock price goes parabolic. $200, $300, $400, $500. NVIDIA becomes a $1 trillion company, then $1.5 trillion, then $2 trillion. The market cap exceeds the GDP of most countries. Jensen's net worth hits $100 billion, making him one of the richest people on Earth, all from graphics cards. The earnings calls become events. When NVIDIA reports quarterly results, the entire stock market moves. One quarter, they report $22 billion in data center revenue, more than AMD's entire company revenue. The growth rate is 265% year over year. The numbers don't make sense. They're too big, too fast, too impossible. But they're real. Every AI advancement needs NVIDIA hardware. Every large language model trains on NVIDIA. Every breakthrough paper thanks NVIDIA in the acknowledgements. It's complete dominance. You're at GTC 2024, NVIDIA's GPU technology conference, and Jensen is on stage wearing his signature leather jacket that probably costs more than a car, but looks like something from a 1990s hacker movie. He's about to announce Blackwell, the next generation GPU architecture that makes the H100 look like a calculator. The Blackwell B200 GPU has 208 billion transistors. 208 billion. That's more transistors than there are stars in our galaxy that we can see with the naked eye. Each transistor is 4 nanometers wide. For reference, a COVID virus is 100 nanometers. NVIDIA is building things 25 times smaller than the virus that shut down the world. The B200 will cost about $40,000, Jensen says casually, like he's announcing the price of a coffee maker. The audience, composed of people who actually understand what $40,000 means, doesn't even flinch. They're already calculating how many they need. The performance numbers are absurd. 20 petaflops of AI compute. That's 20 quadrillion calculations per second. The human brain, in its entirety, is estimated at 1 exaflop. One B200 is 2% of a human brain, except it doesn't need sleep, food, or motivation. But here's the kicker, the GB200 Grace Blackwell superchip, which combines 2 B200s with NVIDIA's Grace CPU, costs $70,000 and delivers 40 petaflops. Companies are pre-ordering them in quantities that make the H100 orders look quaint. Microsoft wants 100,000 units. That's $7 billion in graphics cards. For one customer, that's more than most companies' entire market cap spent on graphics cards. The presentation continues. Jensen shows a slide of AI scaling laws. Every doubling of model size requires 10 times more compute. GPT-4 required a cluster of 10,000 A100s. GPT-5 will require 100,000 H100s. GPT-6? Nobody knows because we'll run out of electricity before we run out of GPUs. The power consumption is becoming a genuine problem. A single B200 consumes 1,000 watts. A rack of 8 consumes 10 kilowatts. A data center with 10,000 B200s, which is what OpenAI wants, consumes 100 megawatts. That's enough to power 75,000 homes. We're literally choosing between AI and air conditioning. The competition isn't even trying anymore. AMD's latest GPU is competitive on paper, but nobody cares because it doesn't run CUDA. Intel's attempts are so far behind they're practically retrograde. The moat isn't just wide, it's an ocean. Every nation now views AI supremacy as national security. The US government restricts exports of H100s and B200s to China. China starts a crash program to build their own GPUs. It's an arms race, except the arms are graphics cards and the battlefield is data centers. Saudi Arabia orders $40 billion worth of NVIDIA GPUs to build their own AI industry. The UAE orders $30 billion. Small nations are spending their entire GDP on graphics cards. It's like the space race, except instead of going to the moon, we're trying to build digital gods. The NVIDIA supply chain becomes a matter of international importance. TSMC's factories in Taiwan, where the chips are made, are now arguably the most strategically important buildings on Earth. If something happens to those factories, AI progress stops. The entire future of human civilization depends on a few buildings on an island that China claims as theirs. Think about this. We've created a single point of failure for human technological progress, and it's a graphics card company that started in a Denny's. Comment if this seems fine, if you think this is a problem. Jensen's wealth reaches absurd levels. He's worth $150 billion, making him the third richest person on Earth. Every time NVIDIA stock moves 1%, his net worth changes by $1.5 billion. He makes more money during a bathroom break than most people make in their lifetime. But here's the weird part. He still shows up to work every day. Still does engineering reviews. Still obsesses over transistor density and memory bandwidth. When asked why he doesn't retire, he says, "We're building the infrastructure for intelligence. Why would I want to stop?" The company culture at NVIDIA becomes legendary. The stock options from 2019 are now worth millions. Engineers who joined 5 years ago are retiring at 35. The parking lot is full of Lamborghinis and Teslas. Someone literally helicopters to work because traffic is inefficient. But the pressure is insane. Every product must be perfect because the entire AI industry depends on it. A bug in CUDA could crash every AI company on Earth. A delay in B200 production could cost the global economy trillions. No pressure. The next announcement is even crazier. The GB200 NVL72 system. It's 72 Blackwell GPUs connected together, delivering 1.4 exaflops of AI compute. The price? $3 million for one computer, and companies are fighting to buy them. Elon Musk orders 100,000 B200s for xAI, his AI company that's trying to build maximum truth-seeking AI, whatever that means. He tweets, "Ordered $4 billion of NVIDIA GPUs. Jensen is the arms dealer of the AI revolution." Jensen replies, "Just trying to accelerate computing." The earnings report for the second quarter of 2024 breaks all records. $30 billion in revenue for one quarter. The data center business alone is larger than Intel's entire company. The profit margins are 73%. They're printing money faster than the Federal Reserve. You're at NVIDIA headquarters in December 2024, and the building feels less like a tech company and more like the command center for human civilization. Every major decision about AI anywhere on Earth somehow routes through here. The receptionist jokes that they should rename it Earth GPU headquarters, but it's barely a joke. NVIDIA's market cap has hit $3 trillion, making it the most valuable company in history. Not tech history, all history. More valuable than Saudi Aramco at peak oil. More valuable than the Dutch East India Company adjusted for inflation. A graphics card company is worth more than companies that literally extract the Earth's resources. The entire S&P 500 now moves based on NVIDIA earnings. When Jensen speaks, global markets shift. One analyst comment, "NVIDIA sneezing could cause a recession." It's hyperbole, but not by much. The company is generating $100 billion in annual profit. Not revenue, profit. They're making more profit than most companies make in revenue. The margins are so high that business schools are rewriting their textbooks. One professor says, "NVIDIA breaks our models. They're not supposed to be possible." But here's the thing about being essential. Everyone hates you for it. Governments are getting nervous. The US Congress holds hearings on NVIDIA's AI monopoly. The EU threatens regulation. China is pouring unlimited money into breaking NVIDIA's stranglehold. One senator says, "No single company should control the future of intelligence." There's talk of breaking up NVIDIA, splitting the gaming division from data center, making CUDA open source, forcing them to license designs to competitors. The ghost of Standard Oil hangs over every board meeting. Jensen's response is typically cryptic. "We don't have a monopoly. Anyone can build GPUs. We just happen to be the only ones who did it right for 30 years. Here's the brutal truth. NVIDIA doesn't have a monopoly because they're evil. They have one because everyone else gave up on GPU computing when it was hard, and now it's too late to catch up." The internal culture is struggling with success. Old-timers who remember the NV1 failure can't process being worth $50 million from stock options. New hires expect to get rich and are disappointed when their options are only worth $5 million after 2 years. It's the most first-world problem imaginable. The company Christmas party requires renting out the entire San Jose Convention Center. The entertainment is Beyoncé, because when you're printing money, why not? Someone calculates that the party costs about 0.01% of quarterly profit, making it technically a rounding error, but success brings scrutiny. Every decision NVIDIA makes affects millions. A CUDA update breaks compatibility. Thousands of AI startups might fail. A price increase on H100s. Universities can't afford research. A supply shortage. National AI strategies get delayed. The responsibility is crushing. One engineering director has a breakdown. "I just wanted to make games look pretty. Now I'm determining whether democracy survives AI. This isn't what I signed up for." The competition gets desperate. Intel announces they're spending $100 billion on GPU development. AMD merges with another company to pool resources. Apple builds secret GPU teams. Amazon and Google pour billions into custom chips. But they're all 5 years behind, and in AI, 5 years might as well be 5 centuries. China's attempts to build domestic GPUs are particularly interesting. They throw unlimited money and thousands of engineers at the problem. The results are adequate. functional but not competitive, like building a Ferrari from blueprints but missing the decades of racing experience that makes it actually fast. The geopolitical implications are staggering. Taiwan, where NVIDIA's chips are manufactured, becomes the most protected island on Earth. The US Navy has ships permanently stationed nearby. Any threat to TSMC is treated as a threat to Western civilization. We're one earthquake away from the AI revolution stopping. Jensen, now 61, shows no signs of slowing down. He still works 100-hour weeks, still reviews chip architectures, still does customer calls. When asked about succession planning, he says, "Why would I quit the most interesting job in the universe?" The board of directors, all billionaires from NVIDIA stock, nod along. They're riding the greatest wealth creation machine in history. The company is worth more than the entire cryptocurrency market, more than all the gold in Fort Knox, more than some continents' combined GDP. But everyone knows this can't last forever. Moore's law is slowing. The easy gains from parallelization are gone. Physical limits are approaching. Atoms are only so small, speed of light is only so fast. The next 10 times improvement will be harder than the last 100 times. New paradigms are emerging. Quantum computing might obsolete classical GPUs. Neuromorphic chips might better mimic brains.